UK, Germany, Europe, and Oromia. And good evening, Australia. Gadaa, welcome to the second international virtual forum of the Oromia Human Rights Group. I am Trevor Truman of the Oromia Support Group, based in UK and Australia. And we are part of a consortium called the Oromia Human Rights Group, together with Advocacy for Oromo in Australia, the Human Rights League for the Horn of Africa based in Toronto, with an office now in Finney, and we are joined today by the manager of that office in Finney and by the boss in Toronto, and OMRO, the Oromo Menschenrechts- und Hilfsorganisation, based in Hanover in Germany. And we are here at the, with the help of and the collaboration of the Oromia Global Forum, which has shown itself to be a huge and strong platform for the Oromo internationally over the last couple of years. And the purpose of this conference and all of our groups is to bring about respect for human rights in Ethiopia, and the Oromia Global Forum is an excellent platform for doing that. This is our second forum. The first one in October. We had editor of Ethiopia Insights, William Davidson, and we had the former ambassador, Herman Cohen, who was the Assistant Secretary of State for Africa when the Derg fell in 1991, and he was one of the engineers of the Transitional Government Charter, Transitional Government in 1991. And it was an unpopular decision to have William Davidson speak, but as it happened, it turned out to be a very beneficial occasion. I believe we changed minds that day, and it was very reassuring to have Ambassador Herman Cohen express his support for the Oromo point of view. And we don't know what background chats he will have to other influential people in the USA as a result of that forum. We're very lucky today to have an international team of young activists: Angato Yusuf from the UK, Abdi Banti from Germany, and Maratu Kitila from the USA. They're in charge of running the show, and they're handling, sorting, and asking questions to our panelists. And I'm jolly glad they're doing so, because the thought of organising all the questions into one coherent whole would be frightening for an old man like me. The programme is that I'll hand over to Angato very shortly. Then each of 4 speakers will speak for up to 5 minutes, broadly outlining their perspective on the human rights situation in Ethiopia, along the lines of their own specialist and expertise. And it's a very talented panel, and I'm delighted to welcome them. After they've spoken for 5 minutes each, they will be asked questions by Angato and their team. That's Angato, Abdi, and Meratu. They will be asking questions that have been prepared beforehand, and after that we will be opening up the questions to the audience. The audience will be able to ask the panelists directly questions, and Angato will tell you the process for doing that. Finally, 10 minutes before the end, Reverend Tito Banti from Hanover will speak briefly, followed by Jamal from the Oromia Global Forum, summing up. Very good. Now, the speakers, let me do a brief introduction. I've known Cecil Trumbull for, well, at least 2 decades, since he's been writing about human rights in Ethiopia, which is the thing that I've followed, obviously. He's a political anthropologist, amongst other things, director of Oslo Analytica, and professor and research director at the Peace and Conflict Studies of peace and conflict studies at Bjorknes University College, formerly Professor of Human Rights at Oslo University up to 2010. He's the founder and partner of an international advisory company, the International Law and Policy Institute, and he's an expert on Ethiopia and Eritrea, human rights, governance, and conflict resolution. I've been following his critical research on Ethiopia for decades now, and I must say he's always a good voice to listen to. Oh, I should have mentioned that he has headed and taken part in election observer missions, which is particularly relevant in the coming year, I hope. Then we have the Genocide. He's an academic and journalist. He's a graduate of Addis Ababa University. He's studied languages and has an MA in journalism. He was an assistant editor at Barissa newspaper up to 2004 and was editor-in-chief of the Ethiopian Herald from 2005 until 2012. He was a lecturer in language studies at Addis Ababa University and the Rift Valley College. He's the founder and vice president of PEN, International PEN in Ethiopia, and he's the president of the Nile Media Network and a board member of the Ethiopian Christian Journalists Network. Etifa Boka is director of clinical laboratories for a major healthcare firm in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. He's been working for over 20 years and serving with evangelical churches. And recently he was president of the church council, of a church council in Minneapolis. He had a narrow escape at the age of 9 when he was beaten, tortured, and hanged by the neck by forces of the Derg, the communist military dictatorship. This leaves us with Abdurazak Kadir, who's a graduate in education, chemistry, and maths, and Bahadar Teachers College, and he's also a teacher, head of education and capacity building at Kombolcha in East Hararghe, and vice president of the Lucy University College of Diridawa up until 2008. And he's now a high school teacher in the USA since 2008. He's a long-term activist and chair of the Oromo Activists Association since September of last year. Well, these are your panelists. I would like now, and I'm very pleased, to hand over the proceedings to Ade Angatu and her team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trevor or Bogaleto, for that wonderful introduction to this event. I'm very honored to be here with my co-moderators, Abdi Benti and Marato Kitila, and we look forward to facilitating the rest of the event and hosting the question and answer session later. So as Dr. Trevor mentioned, the next portion of the program will be the talks from our presenters, our guest panelists. And we'll just get started straight away. The first person to speak will be Professor Kjetil Trondvold, and he will be speaking on human rights, election, and the chance of political transformation in Ethiopia, past, present, and the future. Professor Trondvold, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Angatu, and thank you all for inviting me to participate in this session. Yeah, it's a tall order to speak about such a broad topic in 3 to 5 minutes, so I'm going to make a very narrow presentation highlighting 4 issues, which I believe will be detrimental in how the forthcoming 5th June election will be conducted. I base these 4 issues on my observations of Ethiopian elections since 1994, Actually, I also was there in 1992, but was not an official observer to the local regional elections, but I was in Tigray during that period. But I was first an observer to the 94 Constituent Assembly election, and obviously also the 1995 general elections. And since then, I have been observing and researching more or less all elections in Ethiopia, with a couple of exceptions when the government at that time denied me access to be in the country during the election because of my critical writings on the democratic performances of EPRDF. But so that's, you know, I'm using that historical backdrop in order to interpret the current context of the forthcoming election and why that election most likely will not be any credible, free and fair election. So, number one, obviously the role of the incumbent party, the government party, is determinantal in any election performances. We have seen that during the EPRDF elections, how they have totally dominated the political landscape and marginalized any kind of opposition due to its omnipresent power and presence throughout the country. The EPRDF was dissolved in 2019, but on the remains, the Prosperity Party was established. And we also know that the cadres in the villages are the same as they were during EPRDF. And we also know that the authoritarian exhibition of the central leadership is more or less the same today as it was during the EPRDF era. We did see a brief window of liberalization and more democratic openness after the coming of power of Abiy Ahmed in 2018, early 2019. But the trend since at least mid-2019 until today has been declining in terms of democratic space and liberal values in the country. And there are no signs that that will reverse again to more openness ahead of the forthcoming election. So the dominant role of the incumbent party will make the forthcoming election less credible in terms of democratic standards. The second issue then follows naturally from the dominant role of the party, and that is the unequal playing field when it comes to democratic context of the country. The incumbent party is in full control of the political landscape. It has arrested opposition leaders since last year, opposition leaders who some are still imprisoned, others have been released. Charges are pressed on several of them, and court cases are ongoing. Branch offices of opposition parties, particularly in Oromia, but also other regional states, have been closed down over the last 1.5 years. Members of opposition parties, particularly the Oromo opposition parties, are arrested, intimidated, harassed as we speak. So, and all the resources of the state, so to say, are put behind the incumbent party and its own position. So without a level playing field, it doesn't look well for an open and free and fair election in June. And of course, issue number 3, maybe the most pertinent ones as we speak, is that to conduct an open, free and fair election in a country at war, where you have a civil war raging in Tigray, where you have a full-scale insurgency in Wollega and other parts of Oromia, where you have instability, political violence, massacres in several of the other regional states. The context of a civil, peaceful campaign is not there, obviously. The political context of peace and stability is hugely necessary in order to conduct an open campaign and to conduct an election without fear for the electorate to participate. I don't think that exists in Ethiopia of course, in some areas there is a possibility, but in large areas of the country, you don't have that context of peace and stability to conduct an open and free and fair campaign and election. Number 4, and possibly the most important issue when it comes to the history of election performances in Ethiopia and in establishing democratic a culture of democracy and safeguarding a political transition from authoritarianism to democracy. One of the most important issues there is obviously the existence of independent institutions of checks and balances, which are needed to secure or to hold at bay the incumbent's power during such a fragile transition. That means that you need an independent and strong judiciary and a court system. You need an independent police and prosecuting arms of the judiciary. You need a strong and independent-minded parliament to oversee government performances. And certainly also you need independent institutions as an election commission in Ethiopia. None of these institutions in Ethiopia today are independent of or autonomous of executive interference. Hence, as we have seen throughout since 1992 or 1991 in Ethiopia, where all these institutions were controlled by EPRDF, they lacked the capacity to provide checks and balances to government power. And still these institutions lack that independence, lack that capacity to provide checks and balances to the current government party's exhibition of power. Based on these 4 reasons and the history of electioneering in Ethiopia and the current context of the country, the upcoming election will thus probably likely be a well-orchestrated and controlled exercise in the areas where the Prosperity Party dominates on the ground. In the areas where there are strong opposition, it will likely be very much a controlled context, inhibiting the display of opposition activity and electoral preferences by the electorate. This does not mean that the elections of June the 5th, if it will happen, I still have a question mark behind that. It might very well be postponed again. But if it will take place on the 5th of June, it will most likely be a plebiscite or a symbolic exercise just to affirm and confirm government authority. And by that, cloaking the government in a so-called democratic facade, as we are very much used to in Ethiopia during the 27th years of EPRDF, and how they used elections as a symbolic manifestation of so-called democracy. So I don't think we should have high expectations. But nevertheless, elections are important in any country, also in order to show the lack of democratic performances and to expose a government's abuse if that takes place. And maybe this is the first step in order for some of these institutions, like the Election Commission, the Election Board, to show an incremental steps towards more autonomy and towards a more critical stand on also the incumbent party during the election. You have to wait and see what comes out of that. Thank you. Those were my points.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation, Professor Kjetil Trondvold. Our next speaker is Mr. Dejene Tesema, who will be speaking on the role of media in promoting human rights, justice, peace and development, and ensuring government transparency and accountability. The floor is yours, Mr. Dejene Tesema.
Okay. Hello all. Thank you, organizers, for having me in this meeting. This paper is prepared on a short notice. The basis for my presentation is observation, secondary sources, and empirical experience as a person who has been for pretty long time in the Ethiopian media industry. Our discussion point will be home-based media and news media for that matter. And I'll be very soft on the state media because there are different media types by ownership in Ethiopia. So I will be focusing mainly on the so-called free press. And the time frame I'm going to talk about is after the post-EPRDF period, the so-called reform period. And having said this, just a little bit to reflect a little bit on state media and party media. They are almost the same. You can't draw any distinction between party media, for instance, or as they call it, party affiliated media such as FANA, Walta, and EBC. In the same token, it is difficult to draw a line between private media when we look at media outlets such as ISAT, which was established by Arbanyot Ginbot 7 and now promoting the ideals of Citizens for Justice, for Social Justice Party. And as far as the law goes, the Ethiopian constitution provides for free expression, for protection of media, but there are challenges specific to state media, specific to private media, the so-called private media, and despite the challenges, we expect minimum degree of basic standards to be met by all media outlets. We expect from media accuracy, credibility, truthfulness, objectivity, impartiality, and so on. But when we look at the practices of the media outlets, particularly this free press, we don't find these expectations being met. And I'll have in the discussion and question and answers maybe showcases for my claims. Having said this, there is double standard, double standard in media treatment in Ethiopia currently. The government in power is soft to Ethiopianist or so-called Ethiopianist pan-Ethiopia media, which is basically the Amhara media versus Tigray media and Oromo media. The state in Ethiopia from Haile Selassie time to now is always and always anti-Oromo media. For your information, it may be the first state orchestrated assassination on Oromo journalist in Mogadishu, Ayub Abubakar, back in the 60s. So since then, government is always crack down on Oromo media, jailing Oromo journalists from Barisa. When I'm speaking about Barisa, unfortunately, we lost a very prominent person, Mahadi Hamid Mude, the father of Barisa, as they call him, just a day before. Let his soul rest in peace. And Barisa was the first free press in Ethiopia, free newspaper in Ethiopia, and it was confiscated after a few months' publication, and its journalists were jailed, people like Kuwe Kumsa and Johannes Hunde, for decades. And still that tradition continued on Oromo media, Oromo journalists. Now, Tigrans are joining us, as they have been doing to us for a long time during EPRDF era. They are now the ones under the government target. And media is now in Ethiopia a liability than an ability. It has failed to promote peace, democracy, harmony, and coexistence among peoples, among nations, among minorities and the marginalized majorities. So I will stop my discussion here and we'll come back to details through questions and answers. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Dejaneta Sama. That was an excellent talk as well. And we look forward to come back to the conversation in the Q&A. The next speakers are Mr. Etofa Boka and Mr. Abdrazak Gadir. They will be presenting on the rise of political assassinations and other human rights violations in Ethiopia. Are we on our way back to the Red Terror era? Mr. Etofa will be starting us off, so please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to both presenters that came before me. I always enjoyed Mr. Trovel's critical writing. Thank you for the work that you're doing in that part of the world. Today's political environment increasingly resembles earlier period of turmoil in Ethiopian history. The pattern of violence that are taking place since the so-called reform of 2018 parallels the pattern of violence which followed the overthrow of Emperor Haile Selassie in 1974. The violence after the assassination of the emperor, which involved both rebel campaign of the assassination of the emperor, which involved both the rebel campaign of political assassinations, known as the White Terror, and the state orchestrated mass murders, known as the Red Terror, by the military junta known as Derg. Abiy Ahmed himself noted parallels despite that he is one of the culprits. He warned in an interview last year saying, I quote, "It started with the killing of the government officials, and the government during that time responded with unmatched force. There are people who want to repeat that. We have to be responsible not to repeat that history," end quote. It also resembles the mid-1990s after EPRDF overthrew the Derg in 1991, and then fell out with its allies such as OLF in transitional government, ushering in a period of bloody instability. In 1996, an Oromo singer and a political activist called Ebbisa Adunya, was slain in his home in Addis Ababa in circumstances which echo those surrounding the days of Hachalu Hundessa this year. There had been many high-profile political assassinations since Abiy took office in 2018. Simanyo Bekele, the chief engineer of the country's widely popular infrastructure mega project, the Grand Renaissance Dam, was found dead in his car in Meskel Square. The police determined it was a suicide, but this was widely disputed since the prime minister called it assassination, and the Oromia regional president blamed the Tigrayans for it. The late General Saire Mokannan, Ethiopia's former army chief of staff, a widely respected general, was assassinated by his own bodyguards on June 22nd of 2019. The general was rushed to the hospital, but later pronounced dead. His companion, a retired general, who was also on the site, was killed on the spot. On the same night General Saire was assassinated in Finfinne, several top officials in Amara regions were assassinated, including the regional president. Days later, the suspected Amara State's then security chief, Asaminul Sige, was killed by the army. In June of 2020, Hachalu Hundessa, a popular singer and activist from the Oromo ethnic group, was shot in his car after criticizing the government on OMN media and stating that the reform was hijacked. This resulted in the death of about 170 people, as reported by various newsletters, physical injuries of at least 500 people, and more than 9,000 people were arrested. According to Ethiopian Human Rights Commission reports, of 123 victims, 76 of them were killed by security forces. This is about 62% of the tragedy. In addition, 190 bodily injuries were caused by the government security forces. Beyond the headlines of high-profile killings, there were many low-level officials such as mayors, security chiefs, and opposition politicians that have been killed in the past 2 years. 4 months before Hachalu's murder, the police commissioner of the town of Brayu was murdered. A few months later, the head of the OLF office in the Bole district of Addis Ababa was killed in his own car. In addition, the recent war on Tigray region and the killing of the region's top officials in the name of law enforcement crusade was the latest episode of political killing. Siyu Masfin, Abai Tsahaye, and the other officials make the list. In particular, over the last 2 years, as reported by Human Rights Watch and the government security Human Rights Watch, the government security forces, including the National Defense Force and the Oromia Regional Police Forces, carried out abusive counterinsurgency operations in western and southern Oromia region. There are reports of extrajudicial killings, mass arrests, and the detentions, and the violence against ethnic Oromo civilians, including medical professionals, accused of supporting or being sympathetic to the armed rebel group of Oromo Liberation Army. One such killing of the civilian in recent days were the Nekemt massacre. Federal police forces killed 5 Oromo youths in their own houses. In summary, according to recent reports by Human Rights Watch, the security and the human rights situation in Ethiopia is deteriorating further under this regime. Little to no progress was made into ensuring justice for the past and the present justice of the past and the recent abuse of human rights. In the past 2 years, high and low profile political killings and the conspiracy theory they produce afterwards have become a recurrent theme in Ethiopian politics. This is resulting in dangerous consequences for an already fragile nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tafa Boka. And then if I can invite Mr. Abdurazak Kadir to continue on the same subject, please. Mr. Abdurazak Kadir, are you on mute? Perhaps we can't hear you.
All right. I'm sorry about that. Thanks so much for inviting both of us, me and Etafa, to be a part of this wonderful presentation. And my friend Etafa, he presented everything all about, the characteristics of red terror, which is which we have seen the last 2 years and which is going on still. So I'm going to conclude his presentation and his speech by showing you guys the data, which is exactly not even what we receive as an activist, but the data that is approved by the Amnesty International, the Ethiopian government reports by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed himself, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, the Human Rights League for the Horn of Africa, the Catholic News Agency, which is published on January 20 of 2021, and the Oromia Police Commission report on Welaga, and the Oromia Support Group, and as well as the Human Rights Watch. All these data are taken exactly from them. We did not even add the data that we receive as activists day and night. So as you guys can see, the rising of the days tool in Ethiopia, and I just divided into regions and the causes of, or who is causing the days. And some of these days that is going on in Ethiopia, the killing that is going on in Ethiopia, are done by the government security. Some of them are by communal clash, and others, the government sometimes complains the Oromo Liberation Army. And if you look at the attack that has been that took place, after removal of the guards of Jawar Mohammed, the government, the Prime Minister himself, he accepted that 10 of those killed, out of 86, lost lives. The 12% of that life was taken or killed by the government securities. And then after Hachalu, within 3 days, which is a report of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, 62% of the killing took place or is, done by the government securities. And when we go to Welaga, according to the Oromia Police Commission, they say that they killed about 385. This is the exact report of Oromia Police Commission. They said we killed 385 people in Welaga. And at the same time, at very similar time, there is another organization which is called the Human Rights League for African Horn of Africa. They reported 60 other individuals are killed by a group who probably they were claiming maybe as Ola did or Oromo Liberation Front did, even though there is no proof and there is no evidence of it. When we see that data, we can see that 85, in that region only, 86.5% of killing is by the government security. And when it comes to another news, which came up just January 20, a few days ago, 750 of individuals are taken away from, or taken out or pulled out from one of the church in Tigray region. And 750 people by of course, the Catholic News Agency, the report exactly say, this is a quote, these people have been killed by the government militia, by the Amhara region militia and the Ethiopian security force. But if we put all these killings together that took place just in the last 2 years, the total number of days that the government and other independent bodies proved is about 1,404, of which 87% of this killing is by the government security. So this is very clear that the killing, the tool killing is rising, the assassination of individuals and the atrocity level is completely different, which might be much more worse than the red terror itself. So it is very clear that based on the evidence and the nature of the killing that my friend Itafa brought to you guys and presented, and this data, it clearly shows that we are already in a red terror era. And saying that, I'll give you guys back to the mediators of this stage, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdulrazak Qadir and Mr. Etafa Boka, for that fantastic presentation as well. We will now be moving on to the question and answer segment of this program. So we have 3 options as to how those of you who are present in this Zoom room can submit your questions. One option is to raise your hand in the Zoom, so that you have an option to raise your hand on your window, so that we'll be able to see a hand that's been raised, and then we can call on you to ask your question. A second option is to put your question in writing in the chat box, and the third option is to put your question into a submission form that we have provided the link for in the Zoom chat as well. We'll share that link again now so that you can easily find it. So you can either raise your hand and we'll call on you to say your question. If we can ask you please to be concise and deliver your question as clearly as possible. Or you can write your question in the Zoom chat box, or you can click on the link for a question submission form that is also in the Zoom chat box. Before we get to the questions that are submitted to us live here in this forum, we have some pre-submitted questions that we will start with, and we'll begin with those now. So the first question that we have is for Professor Tronvold, and the question is, with leaders of major Oromo political organizations in jail, the country in turmoil, some parts under military command, which is a humanized reference to martial law, do you expect the release of these political leaders and safe and healthy debates to commence soon enough to conduct a free and fair election? If not, what alternative do you suggest to diffuse popular frustration and help dodge more chaos or the eruption of full-scale civil war?
Thank you. It's not up to me to speculate the trajectory of the court cases under current hearing in the courts in Addis against the key leaders of the Oromo opposition, particularly the OFC leaders. I saw the statement by Dr. Marera Gudina, a good friend of mine and colleague, that if the situation is sustained, it will be, or it may be difficult for OFC to participate in an election. And I think that is clearly understandable when the key leaders are under arrest and their branch offices are closed down and members harassed and intimidated. It surely is difficult to participate. And Marera knows this personally. He has endured during all elections in Ethiopia under similar circumstances, so to say. I think, the context is unlikely, the political context in Ethiopia is unlikely to change radically the next couple of months. So I don't think that will change before the election. So are there any alternatives, the viewer asked, to mitigate the potential escalation of conflict and unrest in the country? Well, many opposition parties, including OFC and Oromo parties, have asked for an all-inclusive national dialogue in order to create a negotiated consensus on how to drive the politics forward in Ethiopia, both at the regional state level and at the federal level. I also believe that is the only way out for Ethiopia to create a stable transition, or to continue a stable transition. And if that is established, obviously the election is redundant. Then the election should be postponed again in order to facilitate for an all-inclusive national dialogue. So far, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been rejecting these calls. So we'll have to wait and see what he decides in this regard. If he's going to push forward with a very controlled or an election under these circumstances, or whether to take another path to stability for his country. We have to wait and see.
Thank you. The next question that we have is for Mr. Atafa and Mr. Abdrazak. And the question is, there are those that say Hachalu Hundessa was assassinated by Colonel Abiy's security forces. His motives are, they claim, dismantling the country's multinational federal system by accusing it of causing ethnic wars and to stay in power indefinitely. From your research, does this make sense to you? If it does, why? And if not, what do you believe are the underlying motives of the assassination? Mr. Atafa, perhaps if you could go first.
Thank you. That is $1 million question, I believe. From really every angles, reports, evidence, everything points toward the government involvement in Hachalu's assassination. Every interviews, every evidence that is looked at, as probably most of you have seen on recent Kelos documentary, the person who was alleged killing Hachalu by the government, who is right now in government custody in undisclosed location, came out on a video on his own accord that he has nothing to do with the killing. And a lot of evidences really point to the government involvement in all directions. There is no other evidence presented, even there is nothing at all presented that shows otherwise. This claim that you mentioned that the government is doing this to dismantle the federal system and go to unitary system, that has been the pattern of Abiy Ahmed's government from looking at it from things that have been happening in the last 2 years. The government purposely making everything look like ethnic conflict, make it look like that all the problems that is in the country is due to this ethnic federalism. If you have seen a lot of, if you follow Abiy Ahmed's how he comes out on the medias, and whenever the tragedy happens, when he comes on the media, how he categorizes all those killings. In 2 or 3 instances, he came out and said that this is ethnic related killing. In his own term, he's been using in Amharic, Zar Tokkor, or ethnic related killings. And this is to purposely trying to prove to Ethiopian people that the source of our problem, the source of our conflict is ethnic federalism. So they're trying to justify, if we go to unitary system, this problem will eventually go away. One big example is the university student that was, according to government claims, abducted from Damdolo University, which after sorry, my video is off all this time. Those students, I don't know, 14 or 18 students, government claimed to have been abducted from Damdolo University are considered Amhara ethnicity. But few months later, it came on the media that all those girls that were claimed to be abducted in Damdolo was found in Bayodar. During that incident, Abiy Ahmed brought all the families to Arakilo to show his sympathy and stuff like that. But in reality, there is no proof that girls were abducted, and those girls were found. Again, let me show you another after the attempt on Jawar Mohammed's to kill Jawar Mohammed by removing his security personnel. 86 people were dead. If you remember, the prime minister came out and broke down the killing by ethnicity. This is deliberate. No Ethiopian leader have done that before. Abiy Ahmed came out and say, this many Oromos were killed, this many Amaras were killed, this ethnicity was killed, divided the killing by ethnicity. There is this kind of patterns. And there another incident in Brayu where they claimed the Oromos have killed other ethnicity. The prime minister did the same thing, still trying to make a case that ethnicity is the source and at the helm of the problem. This has been from consolidating his party to some of the actions he took. I can see where this claim is really close to what is really happening. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Atafa. Mr. Abdrazak, do you have anything to add to that?
I'll just add a very few. Thank you so much. And we have no doubts as an activist of Oromo, Ethiopia after 2080 wasn't or is not the same as the Ethiopia that we know before. And it's obvious that the group called the PP, they are all thinking that, every single day we hear, especially from the elites of Amara, including the ministers in that country, they complain that the constitution of Ethiopia is a problem to Ethiopia. This is what we hear every single day. And they also say that the constitution of Ethiopia, even it doesn't worth the cost of the paper that TPLF spent on it. They also clearly say that the current constitution of Ethiopia is nothing, just a garbage. And they are clearly saying that we need to get rid of this garbage. And it doesn't even, it wasn't involved with even the Amhara people, according to their claim. And every single thing that we hear, the problem in Ethiopia is a problem of multinational federalism from the right wing, especially from those people who every single day are unitary Ethiopia, one language, one religion, one culture, and so on. So we have seen that after Hachalu's assassination, the only documentary that indicated who killed Hachalu is the one that presented by Kello. And I would like to say thank you, Kello, for doing that. And they know that there is no other way they can prove. There is no way by which they can disprove even the evidence that Mr. Salahu Niami clearly said that I'm not going to die with the truth. I will speak out. then whatever it happens to me, whatever the action the government takes to me, and he said that I will take it. That is the bitter truth, whether they liked or not. So every single time after even assassination of Hachalu Hundessa, the groups that supported unitary Ethiopia, or the Ethiopia of one culture, one language, and one ethnicity, they were saying, we killed Hachalu and we left with Jawar Muhammad. That is what happened. That is a kind of protest. That's a kind of support for the killing of Hachalu Hundessa that happened in Finland. And every single thing that we have seen, the war on Tigray region, we don't believe that it is the war of what they claim. We believe that it is the war to make sure that everything that TPLF came up with to that country has to go. It has to go. They don't want to have a history. They want to start from zero. It is obvious that when they put the statue of Melinek and Haile Selassie in Arakilo, we know that to which direction this country is heading. It is very clear that the reason why they killed Hachalu, he is the one who even put them. His song is the most memorable and the most historical song that told them what they deserve. But they never said thank you even to him. And there is also the warning that Mr. Abiy, I don't know if you guys remember the book that says Yetat Allah Tigel in Amharic. The warning that was given by Abiy Ahmed to Hachalu. And there is no doubt that this is a drama orchestrated by the people who got the power, particularly at this moment, those people who claim that Ethiopia should not be in a multinational state. They have all power. They have the money, they have the bank, and they have the tank. And they're clearly saying that every media, what we hear from the media is every day, every night, 360 Assad, those who went back home in Ethiopia, what are they doing every day? So there is no doubt that the assassination of Hachalu is to shut down the voices of Oromo. And when they shut down the voices of Oromo, when they put all prominent political leaders of Oromos in jail, the goal is to make sure that to get rid of them and nobody stops. This is what Mr. Abiy said. Millions will die, and this is a cause, and nobody will stop us from our goal. That is what he clearly said. Now, thousands are dying, and their goal is to go to the direction of unitary Ethiopia that I believe it will never, ever happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdrazak, for that answer. And I would also like to acknowledge Kello Media for their brilliant piece of investigative journalism in exposing the truth about Hachalu Hundessa's assassination. That is a documentary everybody should watch if they haven't already. So I am going to hand over to Marartu to deliver the next couple of questions.
Thank you, Angatu, and thank you everyone for your remarks so far. We're going to move forward with a couple of questions that were pre-submitted. This one is for Mr. Dejene Tasema. It's often said Ethiopia is a country of 80 plus languages. Do you think the state media you worked in tries to communicate with speakers of all languages or recognizes their right to information? In other words, is the community of the state media diverse enough to understand the diverse audience? And if not, why not?
Yeah, thank you, Marartu, for posing the question. Actually, Ethiopia has never recognized multilingualism in the strict sense of giving service until the coming to power of EPRDF. After the coming to power of EPRDF, as you all know, different languages became languages of curriculum, languages of bureaucracy, languages of media, but until recently, even the widely spoken languages such as Afan Oromo haven't got the right status. And it has been always the case that the majority are marginalized in every sphere, including language use, media service. So the media I have worked for with the Ethiopian Press Agency, where there are 5 publications at the Zaman: the Ethiopian Herald, Barisa, Al-Alam Arabic, and Daman magazine. Daman was published. I don't know whether it is still in publication or not in Amharic. At the Zaman is Amharic, English is, the Ethiopian Herald is English, and Al-Alam is Arabic. And the Ethiopian state always targeted foreign audience like French during the Haile Selassie time, and during the Derg time, English, and Arabic also. Actually, Arabic service is that visible. It is only few copies, few hundreds of copies every week. And even the distribution is not that big to reach the target audience. Barisa, unfortunately, this is a sad story to say. When we have this, is on record that Barisa, when it started publishing, had 30,000 copies that were distributed by individuals, by Oromo nationals, not by agencies. And sadly, when I was working for Barisa newspaper, it was quite few, 2,000 copies. Even those copies were distributed by the Ethiopian Press Agency distribution wing, and we had the information that it was just dumped somewhere, not reaching even the Oromo brokers. At some point, the distribution was just jointly made, done with Kalacha, which was published by Oromia State. And finally, they saw it was just being distributed fairly. They terminated the contract with the distributor, with Kalacha, the distributor of Kalacha. So if you remember, the Ethiopia radio, it is out of my sphere actually, it was a broadcast, and you remember during the Derg era, the Ethiopia Radio Afan Oromo service was presented early in the morning when the Oromo farmers go to work, go to farming, and still in the evening at 6 p.m. when the Oromo farmers are still in their garden taking care of their farm. Even the time allocation was very segregatory, very unfair. It was only 1 hour service. Now, recently, maybe after 2010 or around 2010, the Ethiopian Broadcasting Service, I don't know how they call it, the Ethiopian Broadcasting Service, OBN, Broadcasting Network, as they call it, the maize TV, Bokolo TV, started service just by its own, taken out from the Ethiopian television. And actually, if we just give credit to the very service, I mean the very service that Afan Oromo service has got wider airtime, is one step forward. Otherwise, to my knowledge, the only media outlet that started serving the broader mass of Ethiopia is OMN until it was shut down last year in June 2020. If you remember, when this COVID pandemic emerged, it was OMN which was at the forefront to caution people, to aware people in about 17 languages, if I'm not mistaken. The government media, the state media, which was supposed to do that, didn't take that step, didn't go, even they didn't thank OMN for doing that. Finally, they shut down OMN, they saw, because OMN was gonna to serve as many languages as possible in that phase. So the Ethiopian state has never been friendly to nations and nationalities of that country, and they don't seem to give any service in other languages at the main media station. Actually, there was Afar broadcast, Afar service, there was Tigrinya service, there was Afan Oromo service at Radio Ethiopia. I don't know whether it is now intact or not. So to my knowledge, the Ethiopian state is not willing to serve Ethiopians in their own language and is not willing to promote Ethiopian cultures and communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Professor Trumbull. Do you think that the Ethiopian empire can be democratized?
Yes, any country, empire or not, can be democratized. It will take a considerable long time to really entrench both the institutional changes needed, but also in a way the deeper, if I may say, changes of political culture in the country, where liberal values are understood and respected and supported by all segments of the population. The institutional changes is kind of the easy one. It's much more difficult to change the political culture of a society to respect those standards of liberal democracy. But certainly Ethiopia can also transition towards that. The question is, if Ethiopia opens up for that transition, will Ethiopia remain as one country at the end of that transition? Because part of the contestation we see in Ethiopia today is obviously at the group level, at the nationalities level, not the individual, not only individuals' pursuit of democracy, but there are also then the nationalities' pursuit of democracy and hence self-determination. So that's the question, if Ethiopia is willing or daring or being enabled to open up for full democratization. The country itself might change at the end of that route. And that's why we see these back and forth movements in a way, as experienced today. I think just to drive that point home, the situation in Tigray is a good example of that question. I was in Tigray in well, several times last year, last time in September during the regional elections. And I traveled also outside of Mekelle, all the way up to the north to Zalambesa, and spoke to people from a variety of backgrounds and living all over Tigray. And more or less everyone I spoke to, even at that time, said that Tigray, we as Tigrayans and Tigray belongs in Ethiopia. We are Ethiopians too. We are the cradle of Ethiopia. But if the situation continues as it is, with experienced persecution and with the experienced insecurity individually and collectively, we will be forced to take another stand. We are pushed out of Ethiopia because we don't feel safe in Ethiopia any longer, either individually or collectively. And then the next month, the war started. And I think at the tail end of this war in Tigray, what comes out of that, it's surely a sentiment among the majority of Tigrayans who will say Ethiopia no longer, because we are dying under Ethiopia, and we have been dying over and over again. So we need to seek some other solution to that. And that's the huge challenging political processes Ethiopia are facing today, that the opening up and democratizing the country might also involve then that certain nationalities might opt to leave that country. Thanks.
Thank you very much. For those of you who are just joining us, this is the Oromia Human Rights Group's conference on preventing genocide in Ethiopia and the role of media. We are currently in a question and answer segment with our speakers, and I am going to pass it over to another co-moderator, Abdi Bunti, to ask some more questions.
Well, thank you, Marartu. So in regards to time, I would say please either Mr. Etafa or Mr. Abdurazek can answer the following question short. So the question goes, can one conclude that the demonization and condemnation of Cairo by Ethiopianist media emanates from a fear of disintegration of the Ethiopian empire? So either one of you go to answer the question. If the demonization and condemnation of Cairo by Ethiopianist media emanates from a fear of disintegration of the Ethiopian empire.
I think absolutely. The demonization of Cairo is baseless, and there is nothing that shows what they claim Cairos are. The Cairos, really going back to 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, are the one who were at the forefront of this fight, giving their lives without any hesitation, standing in front of the well-trained, well-equipped, brutal military of EPRDF, and brought down that regime to its knee, which resulted in the release of all political prisoners, and all of the change that happened since 2018. What is sad is that the people who are demonizing the Kairos are the same people whose the fight of Kairos grant them a release from a prison. The people who are heading the demonization of Kairos are the people who were in prison, who Kairos fought. Kairos didn't fight only for Oromos. The Kairos fight didn't only bring change to Oromia, didn't only release the Oromo prisoners. The Kairos fight, the Kairos struggle brought freedom to everybody. It brought the entire system of EPRDF to its knee and ushered in the reform that we've seen early in 2018 and 2019, which is then later hijacked again. So there is no evidence that they're presenting Kairos committed, not by government or other people who are claiming that Kairos are, whether they're calling it a terrorist or whatever they're calling them. Kairos remain to be peaceful. No Kairos was captured or subdued with any weapons. Kairos have been always on the street, crossing their arms in a peaceful demonstration. So yes, the fear, it comes from the fear, because really you can't control, or you can't stop the struggle of the people. You can destroy a party, you can destroy an army, you can destroy whatever you call the rebels with force and all that. You can suppress all those, but you can't suppress the will of the people forever. You can suppress it temporarily with force, with bullets, but Kairos has proven that nothing will stop the will of the people. So all this demonization for sure is coming from the fear that the Ethiopian system, the Ethiopia as they know it, is going to go away and it's not going to come back, which I think is true. The old Ethiopia, the unitary Ethiopia, the one language, one country, one flag, one religion, it's not going to come back. It might cost a lot, but yes, that is going away. So all this demonization is really coming from the fear. Thanks. Abdulrazak could add.
I'm sorry, because of your time, I'm not going to take, I will only just add one statement on what Itafa said. If you all remember what the former Oromia president, Mr. Lamma Magarsa said, criminalizing 6 million Oromo users will take you nowhere. So that is very clear that the Kairos were asking for nothing other than democracy and equality. So every doing is just it comes from the fear, as my friend Tafa said. I'm not going to take that much time. That's all.
Well, thank you, you two, for the answers. The next question goes to Mr. Dejene Tesema. And it goes, Ethiopia enacted what they called the Hate Speech and Disinformation Prevention and Suppression Proclamation. There are those that say, even if it is justified in suppressing hate speech, the proclamation poses a threat to freedom of expression and access to information online. What is your view on this proclamation?
Obviously, it is sad that the Ethiopian government shortly resorted to its predecessors, actually not predecessors, in that the stricter sense, it is the same system which claimed to reform itself. And what was expected was that draconian bills such as media and information bill, the anti-terrorism law, and the charities and societies law would be repealed. And some steps were started to repeal those laws. And again, the Abiy regime came up with what it called hate speech bill, which really doesn't work, which is another form of restricting freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and frustrating, intimidating free speech. Sadly, even if they applied it, it would have worked well for the Ethiopian media, who always, every day, vomit hate, hatred, and demonization. Media that present blatant insult and blasphemy, having people from the street and talking about people's religion, people's culture. And the case in point, many of you might have watched a guy called Thaddeus Tantu, who always comes to Minilik channel, Minilik TV, and insults the Oromo people. That would have worked if this bill really was to penalize hate mongers or hate speech makers. But it was just to target those whom the regime doesn't want, the non-conformist ones, such as OMN or Tigray TV. To be clear here, the target now for this regime to intimidate, to avoid is Oromo media and Tigray media. Why? Because these are this block the road to unitary system, to bring the glory that is in Abiy's mind, the past Ethiopia, the emperor era. And these media outlets do not allow this, do not cherish this, do not promote this. Otherwise, the Ethiopianist media, to name them in their true name, the Amhara media are always mongering hate, promoting hate, demonizing people, but they are not accountable. So it is just a weapon used to target those whom you don't want, giving any name. Otherwise, in the first place, it was not important. In the second place, it is not working for all equally. As I earlier mentioned in my presentation, there is double standard treatment for the media in that country. If it is Amhara media, no matter what they say, unless there is there should be some clarity here. For instance, one may ask, Iskender Nagga is just from the Amhara group. His Ethiopia's newspaper is, there are journalists arrested from that media, but it is not because of the content of the media. It is because of Iskender's move to take over Addis Ababa from Abiy and his party. So that is politics, not media. So the hate speech bill was not important. but still it is used for some whom the government, the regime targets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I will hand over to Mrs. Angatu for the next questions.
Thank you, Abdi. And for those who have just joined us, we are here in this forum organized by the Oromia Human Rights Group, talking about peace, democracy, and human rights and preventing genocide in Ethiopia. So the next question that we have is for Professor Tronvoll. And the question is, could you compare and contrast the human rights violations under the TPLF-led regime and the OPDO-led regime?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it is too early to conclude on that, to use that term. I don't necessarily see that much difference, in the sense that there is still the EPRDF mechanisms at play in terms of the centralizing authority of the party, the way the cadre structures are used to suppress local voices, the way the police and security forces are used to intimidate and exert violence on the people, particularly in areas where opposition is strong, the way the institutional framework of the police, the judiciary, Attorney General Office, the court are used is also very much similar. As we have heard with the Dejene, yes, you did have some liberalization of the laws, but then again you had new laws being introduced as the hate speech law, which again kind of made it easy to restrict human rights and freedom of expression by the rule of law, as they call it. So from my point of view, I see much more continuities from one leadership to the other than a change. It is still not a genuine new government, although the party name has changed and one component part of the coalition, the TPLF, has left it, but very much still remains the same in terms of how they are operationalizing and implementing policy, and then the authoritarian face of the state, so to say. But to detail the changes is difficult at this time. You know, the differences, I mean. Of course, one where early on in the transition, if I can call it that, you saw a shift, you know, where the Oromo constituency, due to the Ghetto struggle and others, were more protected by human rights abuse than others, and where you saw maybe a more targeting of a Tigrayan constituency. But that rather quickly leveled out when Abiy Ahmed left the Oromo First agenda and started to become centralizing in his policies and ideas. Then the Oromos and the Oromo constituency again became vulnerable for targeting and for human rights abuse. So, you know, it's again, as I said, more continuities than changes in this regard. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Tronvoll. The next question is for Mr. Etafa and Mr. Abdurazak. And the question is, even within the newly established PP, there seems to be animosity between the Amhara and the Oromo wings of the party. The danger of more political assassination seems to still be a big threat. What are your thoughts on that? Mr. Abdrazak, if I could invite you to answer this one.
Thank you so much, Ngatu. Yeah, as you said, it seems that there is a difference of, there is a difference that we can clearly see based on what they post on the media, or maybe what, the one group wish while the other group opposes, even though they are the members of the same political party. But this is politics. That is how they play politics, to get the support that, the PP of Oromos, the PP from the Oromo group, to get the support that they lost from the Oromos people. What they have to do is they have to come up with what the Oromo people has to probably support. And if you look at what is going on the side of the PP members from the Amhara region, they are all doing what their people want to hear every single day. Every single day, that is what we hear from their side. Even if you remember what the Deputy Prime Minister, who is the Foreign Minister, and the Vice, Mr. What he said is very clear, that when they came up with even defending the Amharas in other nations by any means possible, while the Oromos are saying totally something that dehumanizes even our users. So based on the speech, it seems that, but we don't believe that. It is a political game, just the Oromo PPs are doing to get back the support that they lost from the Oromos, in short. So I don't believe that they have a different agenda, because they do have the same political program. They all are doing what they are doing together. So nothing is different.
Thank you, Mr. Abdrazak. Mr. Etafa, if you'd like to add something, please go ahead.
Yep. So I guess what I wanted to add is to exactly what he said. There appears to be a greater support of Amhara PPs from Amhara people. And there is 100% no support for PPs in Oromia region. So the point Abdrazak is trying to make is really the animosity between the Amhara PPs and the Oromo PPs is really a true animosity or a political game? The question is, are they just trying to create animosity so the Oromos come in defense for the Oromo PP? Then at the end, they galvanize the entire nation for the upcoming election. So the Oromos, as an activist, we're closely watching, is this a true animosity? Is some politics at play? The animosities could be true, at everybody trying to control the soul of the party, every ethnicity trying to be having a more control. As we're seeing in recent days, more of the Amhara region political elites are taking a lot of controls over Ethiopian army, more control over the national security, intelligence and securities. They have now more people in Arakilo than any other ethnicity, including the deputy prime minister, who also became a foreign minister, and head of a security chief now, head of security intelligence. All these are being now controlled by the Amhara region leaders. So for sure, there is an ongoing fight and competition of trying to control the soul of the party, also the country. So we'll see. It's something we have to keep an eye, but we can't for sure say it's a true animosity or it's a political game. But it more really looks like more of a political game.
Thank you, Mr. Atafa, and thank you as well, Mr. Abdrazak. For the next couple of questions, I'll be handing back to Maratu.
Thank you, Angatu. So we are currently continuing our question and answer segment. We're taking questions that were pre-submitted, questions that we're receiving here through the chat, and then also some questions that have been submitted via the Google form that is linked in the chat as well. This next question is for anyone who would like to answer. Is media impartiality achievable in an overwhelmingly polarized society like Ethiopia? And what is the path for this transformation to occur?
May I take the forum?
Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, impartiality is a human element. There is a human element in every undertaking. There is human emotion in every undertaking. But when you work professionally, you will try to avoid partiality as much as possible, because there are set standards. You have to meet the standards by any means. Otherwise, you have to be out of the profession. If you are not able to establish a sort of at least certain degree of standards to maintain certain degree of ethical and professional standards, you have to be out of the industry. That is, there are tendencies, there are favorites somehow invisible, some subtle, support for parties, particularly in the Western world, in Canada, where I live now. There are media outlets, particularly newspapers. We have the Globe and Mail, which is too much conservative. We have Toronto Sun, which is more of liberal. We have, Toronto Star, sorry. We have Toronto Sun, which is more of conservative. This is on ideas. These people, these journalists debate on ideas, not to favor certain ethnic group, certain community, but they debate on ideas. You can see such partiality somehow in a country like Ethiopia, where you have, multinationals, particularly where we have competing interests and we have other issues, unsettled issues. The media shouldn't fund partiality, shouldn't be partisanship, because that will aggravate more the existing problem, the inherited problems that have been there since the formation of the empire. So that is what we do now, what we see now, what we observe now. Media is, when we say media is partial, media is, the Amhara media is always, voicing interests of one group, interests of the Amhara group, not the rest of the nation. Such is, such is not journalism. Such is propaganda. Such is politics. What is the difference between the Amhara media and the Amhara national movement? So this is the propaganda wing of the party. That shouldn't be what we expect from media. As much as possible, certain standards must be met, and as much as possible, harmony and integration. They always, what always sickens me is they talk to you about Ethiopia's integration, Ethiopia's national unity, but they are working towards Ethiopia's disintegration. That is more than subtle partiality. That is more than subtle partisanship. This is blatant siding off with certain political interests. So instead of debating ideas, they just promote certain interest group. Sorry if I address the issue correctly, and someone take on and just continue.
You are muted.
If no one has anything to add to that, we will move to the next question. Thank you.
Can I add something on that?
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, so the Ethiopian media, if you look at the Ethiopian media, the national medias are the mouthpiece of the ruling party. That's always been like that. Like before 2018, it was the interest of the TPLF that were broadcast, and also of the Amhara people and Amhara culture and the like. So there was a bias there. There's no impartiality. And right now, the PP and the national TV, radio, and the likes are broadcasting the views and the propaganda of the ruling party as well. And the Amhara people as well use it because the transmission is mostly in Amharic. And so there is partiality there. And when it comes to Oromo, there is unmet need. And so Oromo media is focused on Oromo issues. And there's a lot of unmet needs in the focusing on Oromia and the Oromo people. And so you would see Oromo media is focusing on Oromo issues, and some might say that is partiality, but there is a lot of unmet needs. Even when it comes to the Oromo, now things are improving, but there has been a problem. Oromo medias some of Oromo media suppress certain ideas. They have their own ideology, and they don't have like some political parties' views, ideas, and things that's happening in their camp have been suppressed. And now things are improving, and so I think we are heading in the right direction, but we can eliminate partiality in situations where national medias do not focus on all, and there is no space for different views.
Thank you so much. This next question is for Professor Trumbull. Ethiopian dictatorial regimes have previously used assistance from the international community to push back against people's resistance. What is your advice for international communities and donors? Are you surprised that the EU, US, and UN have not taken serious actions on the killings in Ethiopia? And what is the threshold for calling it a genocide?
That's a very good question. What is the role of international community, and what can be done within the framework of international law and diplomatic coutume? First of all, I think the reaction so far is not homogeneous. EU has taken a much more proactive stand of criticism against the Ethiopian government, particularly on the conduct of war in Tigray. And they have even suspended close to 90 million euro of support, development aid to the government as a consequence of the war in Tigray. So, and they have come out repeatedly with very strong statements of criticism, and extremely strong, viewed within a diplomatic language, so to say, on the conduct of the government, and particularly their blocking of humanitarian aid to the war-struck population in Tigray. The US, early on in the conflict, were very siding with the government of Ethiopia against the TPLF, and came out with statements indicating that very clearly. Later on, they started to backtrack a bit, particularly when it was known to them that the Eritrean military forces are also involved in the war, and they started to modify a bit. We do expect changes now after the Biden administration have taken power, and already Blinken, the state secretary, has come out clearly indicating that. So I think we will see the US now under the new administration playing a much more critical role versus the Prime Minister and the federal government's policies in this regard. UN is always a difficult animal to relate to because there are various agencies who operate autonomously, and the in-country representation of UN, the UN offices in Addis, are having one opinion, so to say, and you can have differences of opinion in Geneva or in New York or in other places where the UN are headquartered. So far, the UN agencies in Ethiopia has been very timid and very afraid to challenge the narrative of the federal government. Their narrative is very hegemonic, and it has also impacted the international representation in Ethiopia. The embassies, the bilateral embassies in Addis, the majority are silent, more or less, on the atrocities happening in the country today. Not only in Tigray, but certainly in Western Oromia and Wollega and other parts of Oromia region too, which have not attracted international attention, certainly at the level it deserves when it comes to the lived experiences of the Oromo people. But, you know, this is just a reflection on what international relations are all about. It's mainly defending our own interests as European countries or American or whatever, not so much advocating the interest of the Ethiopian people. And that's the situation we are in, and I've written and stated elsewhere that as I see it today, most of the embassies and international presence in Ethiopia, they are in a denial phase. They are working hard not to know about the atrocities happening, because if they do know, they need to take action. So this is what the diplomats call plausible deniability. They always have to clear the desk, so it doesn't bind. If the information is archived and sent back to the home capitals, you are caught, so to say. Then later on, you can be blamed that, you know, you knew this and you didn't take any action. If you don't know, no one can criticize you that you don't take any action. That's how the diplomats now are thinking. Maybe better not to know, because the level of atrocities happening in Tigray in particular, in relation to the population size, might, I say might, get close to a genocide criteria. That's not up to me or anyone to judge. That needs to be addressed by an international court, if it is a genocide or not. But the level of atrocities, the human rights violations, the war crimes already known, and the crimes against humanity committed might indicate that. And as soon as we speak about genocide, then a different set of international law and the responsibility to protect kicks in, which makes it even more difficult for international actors to know what's happening, because then it obligates them by international law to actually intervene. So this is, this is the dirty side of international relations and diplomacy. And it's not, I think absolutely the majority of international, they are quite aware of what's happening in Ethiopia, in Oromia, in Tigray. But it's better not to dig too deep into it because it makes too much trouble for us. And we want to remain diplomatic relations with the Ethiopian government, which of course is important. Diplomacy is all about maintaining relations. That's the first principle. You should have relationship and talk to even people, even countries you are at war with. And Ethiopia has during not only during the EPRDF area, but also earlier, has a very strong own foreign policy where they project their sovereignty. And that's also a continuation with Abiy Ahmed. He rejects foreign envoys. He doesn't want to speak to diplomats necessarily. And he rejects all interference when it comes to, the international requests to facilitate negotiations and so on and so forth. Everything is rejected as it is looked upon as an infringement of Ethiopian sovereignty. So that very strong sentiment of sovereignty in Ethiopia across the political spectrum, I believe, is in one side, very good because you are a sovereign country and you have a proud history. But at the other side of the coin, it's also very negative because it's very difficult for the international community to influence the politics of the federal government. We saw that clearly under TPLF EPRDF. That when Meles were threatened with budget cuts and suspension of development aid, he said, go ahead. We don't need your money. If you're here upon our invitation. And you do as I tell you, so to say. And that kind of attitude puts Ethiopia a bit apart from African countries in general, which are more likely to be influenced by international pressure. Ethiopia is not. It's not that easy for the international community to actually mitigate what's happening internally in Ethiopia today.
Very much. Very interesting insights. I'm going to pass it over to my co-moderator, Abdi Bunti, for some more questions.
Well, thank you. We have a question here to Mr. Etafa and Abdul Razak. The question goes, in regards to the recent political assassinations, we hear a lot about the Red Terror era. For the listeners who are not familiar with this term or the era it defines, could you first tell us about the Red Terror, and second, the reason why it is compared to the current assassinations and events in Ethiopia?
You want me to go, Abdul Razak, or you want to go, Abdul Razak?
Go ahead, Etafa.
I guess I have made several points on my introductory remarks why it pearls the era of Red Terror. So I don't know if I have to go through that again, but during that, after removal of the Emperor Haile Selassie in 1974, there are what we call the White Terror and also the Red Terror. So the White Terror was orchestrated by some of the parties, Mason and all that. Probably people who have better history knowledge can respond to that. Just from my own understanding, probably I don't know if I was born or even a year old or two years old then. But the Red Terror is the the mass killing orchestrated by the Derg regime, which claimed, I believe, more than 750 into millions of lives over the period it took place. So those are where people are just identified and killed because of their party affiliation or their political beliefs. And those killings are mostly high profile killing of political leaders and any that is involved with other parties. The history of that is too detailed, so I won't be going into that. What we tried to do earlier in my presentation was trying to parallel the killings of that time, comparing to the political killing, high profile and low profile political leaders killing that happened in the last 2 years, starting from the engineer to the popular singers to the popular singer Achalu, to the general Saire Mokannen, the army chief of staff, and then another retired general who was on site that day. The killing of high-profile politicians in Amhara region, including the Amhara region president. There have been those high-profile killing, and it is similar or parallel in that regards to what happened during the 1974 of the Red Terror. It is more of eliminating the opposition and taking out all the opponents and solely controlling the country, the party, and the politics of the country. So that is exactly what is happening in the last 2 years, whether it's jailing of all political opponents or killing of high-profile political leaders. It really, the numbers might not comparable to what was happened during the Red Terror, but it is at alarming rate heading that way. Really, a lot of the killings that is happening on Oromia region is absolutely underreported, because most of these killings are happening under the shutdown of the internet and the phone services. So really a lot of killing that is happening in Oromia, especially West Oromia, Guji in Borana, that is really even going to the extreme of killing and jailing the family members, parents of people who are part of the Oromo struggle. So in that regards, we're really, it is not far-fetched to say really what is happening is really similar to those times. We might not compare the numbers, but the attitude, the plan, how things are being executed, the abduction and killing of people in Finfinne, journalists, artists, as recent as one of our a very known artist who was abducted in Finfinne and was tortured for 3 days to death and is thrown on the street on his own. Those are similar in such a ways that there are security forces, vehicles around in Finfinne abducting people off the street, blindfold them, and take them to unknown and disclosed locations, kill them and throw away into the forest, or torture them to death and just throw them on the streets. So there are a lot of similarities there in that manner. That is why we're kind of saying it really alarmingly parallels what was happening during the Red Terror. Thanks.
Thank you. We just quickly want to thank Professor Kjetil Trondvold for participating today. He's having to leave due to other commitments. We just want to express our appreciation for his presence and for his participation, for his thoughtful insights, and we hope to have him present with us on future events going forward. So thank you very much for your contribution, Professor Kjetil Trondvold. And I'll hand back to Abdi to continue with the questioning. I believe Professor Asfar Bayane is raising his hand, perhaps?
No, I was saying bye to Kjetil Trondvold.
Oh, I see. Well, that's very kind of you. Okay, in that case, I'll hand back to Abdi to continue with the questions.
Thank you, Angatu. The next question goes to Mr. Dejene Tesema. You have spoken about a development journalism philosophy. Could you elaborate on that? How could reporting development impact journalism, transparency, and accountability?
Okay, before jumping to answering the question, I want to say a little bit on development journalism. Development journalism, in a sense, is just promoting development and reporting development critically. By critically, it means, for instance, if budget is earmarked for a certain project, how the budget is used, whether the project is completed within the time frame, whether quality is maintained, and such things. And also, who will benefit from the project, who will be affected as the undertaking of that project as a result. Such things are mainly what development reporting is about. This practice has been exercised particularly in Asia, in India, and it was proved to work. Even many reporters were award winners of Pulitzer Award winner, and that was a practice that the Ethiopian government, particularly the APRDF government, introduced as a working philosophy within the state media. By the way, this kind of approach is much criticized. It's not accepted. Even the Western world doesn't recognize this kind of reporting because they think media should be liberal. It shouldn't be, given a certain kind of, guidance to report. Journalists must be free to report, must be free to write. That is the ideal the Western, world pursues. But still, it worked for developing countries like India, like Philippines, and that was what the Ethiopian government introduced to work. However, development journalism didn't work in Ethiopia because all the media outlets became PR services. To share my experience with you, when I was at the Ethiopian Herald, a kind of guidance came from the Ministry of information, later Ministry of Government Communication, and they tell you this is our PR work for this period, for this time, and you will focus on this. Actually, it is up to you to dare to go out of that and to do your share. If you dare to, it requires your determination, but mainly the state media is restricted to focus on certain issues for certain period. Let's say, for instance, I assume that now all the state media are instructed to work on this, exposing this junta thing, this, the outlawed Tigray government. The whole media together sing the same mantra, and that is even though the Ethiopian government is, I don't think that trend, that philosophy is changed, but even during the APRDF era, that philosophy didn't work, because I personally did my master's degree on development journalism, whether it works, whether it is just working in the Ethiopian media, taking Addis Zaman as example. And my conclusion was, no development journalism is being done. It is just government handout, government PR. So in this sense, even those who claim to follow the philosophy of development journalism do not apply it. And state media journalists are much restricted to what the government instructs them to do. But this is particularly regarding news reporting. I don't mean there are no other programs like pages, other culture, education, whatever. This is a different story. But as far as news is concerned, it is more of soft news, pro-government, and while the media are run by public. Okay, am I there? I just search. Hello. Oh, what? Something is just disrupting. Okay. So to get back to the question, development reporting is not a problem, but the instruction from state is a problem, because even journalists do not do proper development journalism. By development journalism, it is critical reporting of development. Actually, all issues are not only development. There is political face of it. There is, social face of it. But generally, the state media are just expected to do development journalism per se, but public relations service. I'm not sure if I addressed the question properly, and if not clear, maybe I have to leave the floor for other persons.
Thank you thus far, Mr. Dejaneta Semma. I guess now I will hand over to Mrs. Angatu. We will decide if we have further questions, pre-submitted questions, or if we take live questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdi. We've been sort of combining pre-submitted questions and questions that have been coming in the chat as we've been going. So some live submitted questions have been getting some answers as well. We have one that was submitted during this forum that I'd like to pose to the floor. And perhaps you could all give your thoughts on this. So the question is, several attempts at democratizing Ethiopia have taken place and nothing seems to work. Instead, Oromo people end up being victims of harassment, imprisonment, and extrajudicial killings. The OLF and KFC proposes the establishment of an Oromia transitional government to bring peace and stability. What do you say to this? Do you stand with Oromo people based on the experiences of Oromo people as part of Ethiopia and Ethiopian history? And I meant to say Kafao, of course, OLF and Kafao.
What was this question for?
So this question is open to the floor. Whoever wishes to tackle it can go ahead. And if all of you would like to give some of your thoughts, that would be great.
Maybe you can direct them to Abdulrazak or Atifa first, and then other person can add.
Okay, sure. Atifa, do you have any thoughts on this, or Abdulrazak?
Okay, can you repeat your question just one more time?
Yeah, of course. So the question is, several attempts at democratizing Ethiopia have taken place and nothing seems to work. Instead, Oromo people end up being victims of harassment, imprisonment, and extrajudicial killings. The OLF and OFC proposes the establishment of an Oromia transitional government to bring peace and stability. What is your take on this proposal? And do you stand with this proposal?
To be honest, from the time of the creation of Ethiopia, we know what Oromos have gone through. And even though Oromos contributed for everything that took place in that country, but we never been appreciated for that. Everything that you said, being present for free speech, being present or tortured to speak the truth is what is still going on for the last 150 years. So, to be honest, this decision, the question to stand with either both sides, you know, it is up to the Oromos people, but this has to be answered in a way that benefit the Oromos instead of just giving the idea on this question. And more than anything, if the Oromos united, but not united in terms of word that we always say Stokuma, but if we unite in action and we decide and we go to any of those choices, it may work for Oromos. But democratizing Ethiopia based on what we have seen for the last 150 years and as well as the last 2 years, and working in that country and getting even a credit what the Keros have done, we have seen that it seems that it is a little bit difficult to clearly figure out what is best for the Oromos. But I will give this idea to the elites of Oromo to sit down, and instead of we just decide as an activist, we are activists for a reason. We cannot decide on this question right away. What has to be done is the elites of Oromo has to sit down and discuss together and filter what is good for Oromos and what is not good for Oromos, and follow that route. Thank you.
Just to add to that, I guess the argument goes to, can you really democratize an empire? I know Dr. Trovel earlier said it is possible, but I guess that's a huge argument. If it is possible to democratize an empire that was put together by force, military force, not at the free will of the people. So history proves, even our own history, like from your question, our own Ethiopian history proves that we were not able to cross to that line of democracy for the last 100, 150 years of this country called Ethiopia being put together by force. So it's a huge argument. Was it done? Is it even possible? And then the question is, what does it take to get there? It is really almost looking at history from our own experience. It just poses a great question. And answering, should we support the proposal by Oromo Congress Party in OLF of creating transition government? I think that is, at this point, that is the only option that exists. And the question is, I'm not going, I just don't like the blanket statement of, yes, let's do a transition government. What does that transition government, what does it mean, or what does it look like, and where is it leading? Where is it gonna take us? What is the end game of the transition government? What are we gonna do with it? Honestly, at the end of it all, Oromo needs to get a point where we have to go for referendum. Do we want to stay in this empire called Ethiopia, or do we have to make our own decision? Because we've been very generous and very patient in trying to hold this country together, and trying to hold this nation together at our own cost of life, resource, and everything. Oromo has paid way more than it needs to keep this country together. As earlier, Dr. Galato said that Herman Coins kind of regrets what happened during the 1991, really ignoring the quest of Oromos for referendum and only granting Eritreans the referendum. So, to my opinion, yes, it is good to push for that transitional government, but what does that mean? What is the end goal? Most of our, here is what I want to get to. Our political leaders have been leading in making most of the decision and calling most of the shots. Now, it needs to get to the point where people have to decide. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very thoughtful answer. So the next question is for Mr. Dejanet Sema. So it is a two-part question. And the first part is, it appears Ethiopia is one of the countries where press freedom is highly suppressed and journalists are widely persecuted. However, there are journalists freely and happily working in state media. So what does this say about the freedom of the press? And the second part is, over the past 2 years, some radically conservative members of the free press became true supporters of the government. They often publicly promote the military measures taken in Oromia and over the past 2 months in Tigray. Is it unreasonable to be worried that we are in the territory of a civil war like that of Rwanda in 1991, which eventually led to genocide? So I'll repeat the first part for you again, and then I can give you the second part once you've answered. So the first part again is, it appears Ethiopia is one of the countries where press freedom is highly suppressed and journalists are widely persecuted. However, there are journalists freely and happily working in state media. What does this say about the freedom of the press?
Yeah, the freedom of the press has been always under stress in Ethiopia. I used to say myself, when I was working for the Ethiopian press agency, for the Ethiopian Herald, I used to tell my bosses, I'm not a journalist here. I'm not a journalist. I'm serving you as a peer person, because the media I am heading is a peer service. So I don't think journalists in the state media are doing journalism. By the way, we were just told always that we need to do investigative journalism, that we should probe authorities and report authority and power and blah blah. In practice, being at the state media, you can't do investigative journalism even if you want to, because it needs budget, it needs also time, it needs also to get sources. At some on some occasions, there were times when the press from the state media questions authorities, they were simply surprised. How come the state media journalist asks me this question? Even authorities do not believe you are posing some serious critical questions to them, because the understanding is that the state media is working for the government. So that is it. But there are windows where you try your best within the framework, within the limits. You sometimes exercise journalism, but it requires your own determination. It requires when you have to be bold enough to write an article in the Ethiopian Herald or in Addis Zaman that criticizes government agencies. Even sometimes you receive calls from PR officers. How come you published this article, this news criticizing our agency? So let me just give you one example how at one time I just told a reporter, go to this place and this place and this place and interview people. There was a huge number of girls coming from Oromia regions for visa application to go to the Gulf region, to Saudi Arabia, to Emirates, to Kuwait, for just maid service. But that was very difficult for them. They come with some, meager resource, little amount of money, live in town, and finish their money. It came to my attention that these girls are suffering in Addis Ababa, going to the office of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Labor. So I just sent the reporter to interview these girls, what happened to them, and cross-check the information with the PR of the Ministry of Labor. Then the PR officer said, we have 1,500 people in line every day. How can we entertain all this huge number? We have limited capacity to do that, so it is natural for the girls to stay in the city to get their visa processed. So I published in the front page that news. Then I think the minister saw the paper at his desk, and called the PR officer. How come you said we have 1,500 now service seekers every day and we can't accommodate them, we can't entertain them? So the PR called me, what are you doing, man? I said 150 person each day. I didn't say 105,000. So I called the reporter, did you record this news? Did you record this interview? Yes, bring it to me. And I heard it was fine, it was perfect. So I told the PR, I can't publish any correction for this. This is your statement. So there was a big fight. And there are a lot of cases. So the government media or the state media journalists are not free to do journalism, and they are just in public relations service. But at times, if you dare, you can try.
Thank you. That's really interesting to hear direct examples of how your work has been suppressed. And then the follow-up question to that was, over the past 2 years, some radically conservative members of the Free Press became true supporters of the government. They often publicly promote the military measures taken in Oromia and also over the past 2 months in Tigray. Is it unreasonable to be worried that we're in the territory of a civil war like that of Rwanda in 1991, which eventually led to genocide?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is just something scary, something, even being at, at state media, I can't afford to encourage my reporters to write that way, to embolden ethnic cleansing. The media was expected actually to do something different. For instance, astonishingly, the Prime Minister spoke at Parliament and claimed his soldiers never killed a single civilian in Tigray. A single civilian, no civilian causality. The media was supposed to do, come on, Mr. Prime Minister, your soldiers were using water cannon or tear gas. How come while you were shelling Magale, you didn't kill any civilian, at least one? This is huge claim, very colossal. No media did that. Even the government media or the state media was supposed to do that. But shockingly, the so-called free press was encouraging war in Tigray. War, how come media encourage war unless you are determined to expect the kind of genocide in Rwanda, the kind of 1994 in Rwanda? And it is shame for media to encourage war, to embolden military oppression in the name of law enforcement. So it is very scary, very radical. Actually, I can see a kind of lack of professionalism, and also kind of very shallow patriotism, very low level patriotism. You can see what happened in Shashamane. In Shashamane, media, TV channels named Nahu and Menelik produced fake video, false video, and distributed that video that shockingly, it is a man crying before camera that his wife was slaughtered before his eyes, before her kids, and that was disseminated throughout the media. They, in a relay system, they took it to the screen. Finally, a very gentle, critical person, a Sidama man, a Sidama guy, checked that information and found out that the woman died of natural cause at Hawassa Hospital. No measure has been taken. Look, another incident regarding Shashamane. In Shashamane, they said Amharas were targeted, Christians were targeted. It was all mob attack against Amharas. Finally, I watched Harun TV that came out with list of people, list of businesses, and their phone numbers, over 100 Muslim members whose properties were damaged. By the government account itself, by the government report itself, out of the 197 people killed after Hachalu's assassination, only 67 were Amharas. The rest, 100 plus, were Oromos. But the media presented that incident as if Amharas alone were attacked, as if Oromos attacked Amharas, as if Muslims attacked Amharas. The Christians, this is just inciting violence, inciting genocide. And to my nightmare, I watched Amhara region police commissioner, who was at some point in Europe, coming home and labeling the Gumus people as cannibals. You know, as cannibals, they eat human flesh, and we use every means to punish these people. Can you believe this? Is this the media that preaches unity? Is this the media that unites Ethiopian to fix Ethiopia together? So it is very scary if this trend continues, if this oppression of media, behavior of media continues to happen. One would definitely expect genocide in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dejanet Sama, for that very sobering explanation. So right now, we would like to take some questions from the audience. If anyone would like to put up their hand and ask a question, then we welcome you to do so. If there's no one who's immediately ready.
Gato, if you don't mind, I just want to add to what the Jenny just touched on. Just to put it in a good perspective, the radicalization of the media is the one side story being told in Ethiopia, and the stories being false, unverified, and baseless. One thing I just wanted to say is, just before I go to that one, is the point the Jenny made about Colonel Abiy claiming no civilian casualties in Mekelle when he was bombarding right and left. That bold claim of the Prime Minister is like a blessing in disguise, to my opinion. I guess that claim really make the international community to pause and question who Abiy Ahmed is. So in a way, that is really creating a lot of questions and doubt in the international community, because this is a bold claim, and nobody can claim after bombarding a city with warplanes. So in regards to the radicalization of media, what is dangerous is that all Amharic speaking medias, or the what we call the Abashas, all the FMs in Ethiopia, all the TVs and satellite TVs, private channels, if you listen to them, they are demonizing day and night the Oromo population. They are characterizing Oromos as a boogeyman and creating hate, fear in that nation. One big thing they're trying is really to confuse other nations and nationalities in Ethiopia, that Oromo is their #1 enemy in that country. Whether they're successful at doing that or not, I'm not sure. But the fact that there is all Oromo medias are either shut down, kicked out, and there is no the other side of the story. There's no other channels or radios, FM radios, and all that tells the other side of the story. The fact that it's only dominated by one ethnic group and people, that is dangerous for our society. The drumbeat of the war for Tigray, that is all done by all these medias, from convincing the up to the religious leaders coming out in support of war, religious leaders, church leaders, mosque leaders, supporting a war on a nation. Tigray is a region that has its own government, that has its own autonomy, but including religious leaders drum beating on all these medias to attack that region, that is really scary. And that is exactly what happened in Rwanda. It is all the medias that have been beating the drum for the genocide that took place. So, yes, if this continues the way it is just a matter of time that what we fear could happen. I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Thank you very much for adding those very important considerations and thoughts. So we have an audience member who would like to pose a question. Safia Yusuf, can you hear me? Would you like to pose your question to the panelists, please, and specify who your question is for, please?
My question is actually to the whole panelist, because every time I hear discussion among the youngest, the oldest, the educators or professors, whatsoever, Oromo population, what I hear, especially from activists, is the expectation that they're expecting from colonizer. These people are colonized, not just Oromo population, but they colonize the land and every aspect of Oromo population in that region. So every time we mention any kind of subject, we come up, they don't do this, they don't do that, or journalists don't do this, or government don't do this. These people are colonizing us. Did India expect from their colonizer to do things for them. South Africa expected, or any other country that has been colonized expect things from a colonizer. How come we don't understand that colony is here to do whatever it takes on the people that are colonizing, the land that they're colonizing, to do whatever it takes to control those regions to their benefits? Why are we expected? People who have a power, people who stand up, everybody speak for them. They don't have to beg. They don't have to ask. They come and ask you. People who are ignoring Oromo population now, people who are saying that what is happening to Oromo population is not genocide. We don't need to expect things from other people. We got to stand up for ourselves, prove it to the whole world that we are colonized. We want to be dependent. So we have to be clear cut what we want and why are we believing and always asking for others to do things for us and then expecting from colonizer, or they don't do the right media. Of course they don't do the right media. The whole idea is to monopolize and confuse and mess up with the population that they're colonizing. So I just want to know why? This is my question. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for your question, Safia. I think that was a very interesting and important question. So you posed it to all of the panelists. So I guess I will call on perhaps Dejane to step up first, and then Etafa, and then Abdurazak.
Yes, we are not actually, in my view, we are not demanding the colonizers to do things for us. We are sharing information. It is up to us to decide what to do and how to deal with it. But the form of colonization that ended in the 60s and early 60s in Africa is a different one, in not actually in form, in a sense, but in form from the Black colonization and the African colonization. So, as you know, all colonizers of Africa left Africa and went back to their original destination where they came to. But this is an empire where the colonizer lives with the colonies. So how to deal with this is up to us. And we are sharing information. We are not actually demanding the colonizers. I hope none of their representative or none of their agency is here with us, but to share information, to see how things are going on, and to see how our people are still suffering from, this defective empire. And when we live with the colonizers, how to deal with it, how to handle it, is up to us. Maybe from my hunch tells me that these people are just beyond the time. I mean, behind the time. They are behind the time. This is an information era. This is a self-conscious, generation, self-conscious generation, not only the Oromo generation, all other nations in that country, where people are just very assertive, self-conscious, know what to do, and fighting this old and archaic system. Yeah, it is up to us how to handle it. And one thing to add is that when we, this is my take, by decolonization, I believe the Oromo must first grab power and the central power and do things the way they like it to. Otherwise, having your colonizers at the center, at Arat Kilo, you can't establish, you can't do anything. Even by decolonization, I understand dismantling the establishments, the imperial establishments, which are intact still. Not for me, it is not physical disintegration, physical, yet separation from the separation from the system, dismantling the system, the Abyssinian system, which is still intact, be it in bureaucracy, be it in church, be it in whatever form. The establishment must be dismantled. You do that if and only if you grab power at the center. That is my take. So others can reflect. I stop here now. Thank you.
I guess I'm next. Sophia, that is a very good question and a very interesting question. And that has always been my question. Why are we begging to get what is ours? Why are we begging others, the colonizers, to take what is ours? Frederick Douglass says, power concedes nothing without a demand. These people who control us by power, they will never concede to what we want, to what Oromos want. We have tried this for 150 years to do it the right way, to do it the peaceful way, where we can have equal rights, peace, justice, and live together in harmony with respect and dignity. And none of that is enough for our colonizers. We gave them our land, it is still not enough. We gave them our resource, it is still not enough. We gave them our girls to marry, that is still not enough. It is never enough for colonizers, and they're not going to give it up unless we take it. Honestly speaking, that is my opinion. We have to take what is ours by all means necessary. Oromo has to come to that conclusion where we say, either you deal with us peacefully in negotiation, or we will take what is ours by all means necessary. We need to cross that. We've been saying Karanaga, Karanaga in peaceful way. We tried that for 150 years. It never worked.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Power concedes nothing without a demand of the people. And we demand what is ours. We're actually dying within our own homes. Not even outside, not even going out to take something. It's actually, they're coming into our houses, into our kitchens. Oromo need to rise up and say, enough is enough. We're gonna take what is ours. Let me tell you this. The colonizers, the Neftenians, They don't know power sharing, and they don't believe in power sharing. They believe that they are God-ordained leaders of that nation. They are the creators of that nation. They said, as the creators of Ethiopia, the rest of the nation should bow down and worship us because we are your creator. That is exactly what they said on the media. Who said that? One of the elites, political leaders. The Amara political leaders. They said, we are your creator, and you have to bow down and worship us. These people don't know and don't believe in power sharing. Let this be known. Let this be known. We need to take what is ours, and by all means necessary. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. Itafa, you raised a very good point, and I would like to add, some of the few things to what you guys said, and to one of the questions that Professor Asafa Jalata raised in a chat group. I think we can't expect anything from the colonizers. That is what we are. We are expecting these colonizers to understand what the democracy is. I think for the last 4 years, anybody who watched the supporters of Mr. Trump must learn something out of it. What happened to the United States at the end, by the time Mr. Trump has to leave the power? I think we, the Oromos, we are the one who are putting ourselves in the situation that we are in today. We are the problems instead of them. We ourselves, we need to look back since 1980s, how these colonizers, how the supremacists of Amharas control that country. The only way and the only tactic and strategy is only one and one. That is dividing Oromos by religion and region, by putting wrong ideologies in between us, and so that we don't trust each other. I think to all the questions, to stop everything, when I am so quiet, when something wrong is done in the western corner of Oromia in Walaga, when the RCs are so quiet, when something is done in the eastern part of Oromia, when we are all so quiet, when something is wrong going on in Guji, that is what the colonizers want. We were so quiet. We were just, we slept a minimum for 1 year, even though we saw that the colonizers are coming back. But now it is proved that everyone believes that. Now we make a mistake. It is our fault not to unite other than words in action. It is our mistake. It is our, it is our problem not to understand and not to learn from the history. It is us who gave them an opportunity after losing 5,000 arrows, who fought, who struggled to make sure that at least, even if we can't have independent Oromia, that the minimum demand that the arrows are died for is for equality. Did we get that? Whose fault is that? Are we looking at ourselves? Are we coming together and sitting down behind the door? Are we really reshaping our narrative, our narratives, to make sure that the world understands, but the world does not help us? Let me, from the previous lecture of our presenter, I learned that The world now is talking about Tigrayans, about Tegarus. Because their population is 5 million, a small killing numbers, when it comes to the percentage, it becomes so high, and then it will be considered as genocide. We are the majorities. We lost the lives more than any tribe or any nationalities in that country. But nobody said anything about Oromos. We are so quiet. We always talk about peaceful means. We are not standing together. Even though 2015, 2016, the people in Ethiopia, the Oromos in Ethiopia, the Kairos united and worked hard, then we got fooled by the same oppressor. So what we need to do is, I think, as elites, we need our elites, we need the politicians to sit down, get out of their butts, and think about what is happening, what happened so far for 150 years. I don't see now when we evaluate even that. I don't see now when we take the next step. I don't see now when we believe it, even you know, sometimes I cannot, you know, Oromos are not even defending ourselves. We are not even in a position of defending ourselves. We are flying. We are running away. Our Kairos are also now started moving or fleeing the country. That is where we are. So we need to come together and sit down, bring something that unity in action. I don't care about the word unity or Tokuma, the song and so on, but the unity in action that brings us, that makes everyone to contribute something. If we do that, I think we can go forward, and there is nothing that we have to demand from foreigners or from the oppressors in that country. We are dying and dying and dying, crying and crying and crying, but we don't even remember what happened 2015, 2016. Do we really remember that? Do we really remember that what happened during the night that Hachalu Hundessa assassinated as Oromos? Are we even writing the true history of us that makes our kids, that gives energy to our kids or to the next generation? Or we are just saying, this is who we are. We cannot be divided. You know, we just leave us divided. I think last summer, the unity between the Oromos abroad, in 2015, 2016, the unity among the Kairos in Oromia, we learned a lot from that. We begged our politicians, all political leaders, to come together and to come up with the solution. They did not. So here we are now. So the question is, it is not something that we, the activists, can answer. It is not something that a single political party can answer. It is what we all have to answer as Oromos. Otherwise, the fittest will survive is the question now. We are not the fittest. We are not even defending our growth. We are not defending our mothers and our sisters. Our mothers are, and our sisters are being tortured everywhere, being killed everywhere because of the political attitude of their kids or their son. This is where we are. Every house in Western Oromia is burning down every single day. We are either divided, Muslims are doing that, or the Wallagas are doing that, the Shanis are doing that. We had enough by the name of OLF. Now we are getting again another way to be bitten by the name of religion and Shani. That's all. So I think this is a time for us to wake up. This is a time for us to come together again and sit down and figure out how we can build something that is common. That every single Oromo says, this is mine, not ours. We have to say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Etafa, and thank you, Dejane, for your answers. Thank you, Sophia, for your question. I think it was a very pertinent one, and it woke up our panelists quite a bit. So so thank you for that question. So we are coming towards the end of our program, where we've gone a little bit over time already, actually. So I'm going to take one last question from Rami Mohammed. And then afterwards, I'll be handing over for closing remarks. So Rami Mohammed, please go ahead with your question and who you are posing it to as well, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this great and informative panel. My question is to actually Abdurazak, I think twice, my brother Abdurazak. My name is Rami and I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. My question is to Abdurazak. He once or twice referred to the Oromo elites, and I have, and many of us have, an issue with that, just because we haven't gotten together collectively and have chosen these so-called elites. In the past, studying what happened in 1991, these so-called elites continuously to let the Oromo people down, making decisions that reflect on them, not necessarily their political organizations. We, time and time again, the Oromo people are let down by these so-called elites. My outlook is about institution and institution building, then using those institutions to identify exactly what are the issues with the Oromo society or Oromo one. So I just want you to clarify clearly what you meant by Oromo elites and who are these Oromo elites and where are they? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rami. This is a good question. Since last June, since the assassination of Hachalu Hundessa, there are questions that comes from every corner of Oromia to activists, saying that our elites should come back together and bring a strategy that moves Oromo together forward. When we say elites, we're not talking about somebody from anywhere, but we are talking people in this group are the elites of our Oromos. Anyone in this group who is concerned about Oromo, who have done something good for Oromos, don't undermine yourself. When we say elites, it shouldn't be a professor, it shouldn't be a doctor, it shouldn't be, it could be, sometimes when we say elites, people consider only those people who got maybe to a higher level of education. Are they elites? Yes, they are. But there are elites, there are educators that doesn't care about the Oromos question at all. I'm not talking about those who are professionally doing only what they trained for. I am asking, or I'm saying when I say elites, those individuals who are concerned about Oromos and who can come up with the strategy that unites Oromo and moves us forward. The willing also should be there. We called the elites, when we say elites, there is nothing that clearly says Mr. X, Mr. Y. Anyone, the group of, let's take one of the group that is led by Jamal, the Oromo Global Forum. They do have so many elites, so many educators in it. But I'm not talking about each of them. I am asking for those educators, for those elites that are working day and night about the Oromo's cases and willing to go forward. It is not about being labeled once as a politician. I am asking for those active ones that want us to participate willingly and to solve the cases of Oromos instead of pointing to others. So it includes each of us. I'm not pointing to anybody else, including myself. Am I doing my job or you are doing your job is a question. Each of us as an elite, what we done? Did we cross? Sometimes we afraid to say the truth. if Itafa is doing something wrong, as my friend, if I don't tell him the truth, the bitter truth, if he's going in the wrong direction, it is my issue. It is me who is taking Oromos in the wrong direction. So when I say illness, each of you, anyone who is concerned about Oromos, who have been involved in the Oromo cases for so long that our people knows, and our people consider that these educators will take us to the next levels, all has to be considered.
Well, thank you. And I just also wanted to say thank you to Marartun, and it's to all the girls that's in here that's leading this forum. It definitely is a change, and I'm so happy to see that. I forgot to mention that earlier, so thank you.
Just to add it to Abdul Razak, I guess the word elites could be used in a negative way and also in a positive way. The term in itself is really mostly stands for influencers, people who can influence the nation, who can influence parties, whatever it is. I guess in a positive term in Oromos, there are no bad elites in Oromos, but we want to say all the influencers, people who can create impact, can influence nation, should come together and forge the future. I guess let's put that in a positive term, saying influencers, I would say. Thanks.
Thank you, Tafa, for adding that remark.
Thank you both for your answers to that very important question as well. And thank you, Rami, for your question. So I think that concludes our question and answer segment. And we'll now move into the closing remarks for this program. So if I may hand over first to Reverend Dr. Bunty to give us some thoughts on what we've been discussing today.
Thank you, Marartu. I would like to speak at the beginning in English, very short, word of thanks, and then shift to Afan Oromo. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending this very interesting conference that was prepared by Oromo Human Rights Group, Oromia Support Group, of which Dr. Trevor Truman is leading, Obuta Shale, and Human Rights League Horn of Africa by the director is Obuga Roma, and then Advocacy for Oromia, Obod Abasa is leading. These four organizations came together and conducted this second virtual conference. Thank you very much, you people who prepared it. Especially, I would like to mention Obota Shale, who played a great role in organizing from behind, especially suggesting that young people be active and participate. I found is a wise advice. From his wisdom, we have accepted. It is nice. Thank you very much, Obota Shale. Thank you, Dr. Galeto, as our chairperson, for organizing and inviting the guests. And thank you, Dr. Trombol, Obo Dejene, Obo Itafa, and Abdul Razak for your really wonderful presentations. I am so happy. In the name of Oromo Human Rights Relief and Organization from Germany, I am part of it, and I'm very much happy with your presentations and your energy and power and enthusiasm. Let's keep on, as young people. You can teach us more. Then I will also thank those Obo Jamal, the chairperson of Executive Committee of OGF, for helping us, and Obo Zalalam, the Executive Secretary of the organizer. Last not least, Ade Angatu, who took very much in the role of leadership as a young lady. Thank you very much, Angatu, Marartu, and Abdi. And we need such young people with new ideas and energy and wisdom. Please, we are getting old. Don't leave us alone. Take over the leadership. I'm happy that my son today is part of it, and so that I should not speak much because he is also asking questions. So let me shift then from English to Afaan Oromo. Ya saba Oromo, duguggaa sanyii sabi alagaan nurraan ga'e haasofneerra waan baay'ee waanan haasa'ullee hin qabu. Waanan haasa'uuf silaa yaada Abdurrazaaq jedheera. Kanaaf waan tokkotu jira. Adigaa qeesiin lallabaan jalqaba wangeelaan isinitti lallaba. Si'a baay'ee wanti nama dhibu tokko saba biccuu Israa'el jedhamtu kuni maaltu saba kanaa hamma kana cimsee isaaniin ga'ee hamma kanaan ga'ee jettanii yoo qoratanii yoo isa qorannaa wajjin keenya. Biccuu xiqqoo waan tokko qabu tokko ijoollee isaanii aadaa isaanii eenyummaa isaanii barsiisuun dirqama. Ijoollee xixinnoo jechuudha. Kan immoo haadhotii fudhata. Biyya kamiinuu hadhaqan eessa hadhaqan warri Yihuudota. Kanaaf rakkoo hundumaarraa hafan of ta'anii jechuudha. Namni gaafa of ta'u badaa isa rakkisu jechuudha. Dabballee isa barbaachisu. Mucaan xinnoo jalqabee Israa'el ta'uu isa amanu. Mucaa tokkoon cuuphe waldaa kiristaanaa asii keessatti adiidha. Harmeen koo akkanaan jette yoo kiristaanummaa si ameeqa si cuuphanis si cuuphuu baatanis yoo confirmation classii bantii fansii kennan si kennu ati Yihuudoma taatee haftanaan jettee naan jedhe mucaadha waggaa 13. Dhuguma immoo mucaan amma torban dhufuu dargaggoota Yihuudaa wajjin biyya Xaaliyaanii dhaqaa maal jechuun barbaada? Ijoollee ofii seenaa ofii biyya Ijipti keessatti garba turtanii bara garbummaa turtan sana akka hin irraanfanne jedhan akka isaan hin irraanfanne barsiisuun cimina isaanii isa tokko aadaa isaanii eenyummaa isaanii eenyuun akka ta'an seenaa isaanii barsiisuutti cimoodha jechuudha. Lammaffaa wanta isaan cimse warra Yihuudotaa si'a baay'ee inni agartu yoo ta'e seenaa isaanii biyya isaanii nari'amuu Baabiloonitti hin baqatanii biyya lafaarran bittimmaanii hin rukutamanii hin badan. Gaafa sanaa warri macaafa qulqulluu beektan hin beektu. Asitti quban qaban ofitti quba qabu. Abdurrazaaq jedhisan. Nutu jedhe balleesse jedhanii hunduu gadi bu'ee mooticha Daawitii ka'ee daaraa mataatti of firfirsee jedha. Qalbii diddiirrata. Achii kaana deebileedha. Maal taanaan Yihuudaan mo'amee booji'amee biyya sana dhaqee biyya Baabiloon maaliif dhaqee maaliif nuti cubbuu hojjennaan cubbuu keenyaaf adabamne waaqa keenyatti araaramna cubbuu of keessaa baafna kottaa jedhanii cubbuu maqaan aaniitu of keessaa baasu. Waggaa waggaatti ikkubbuu waan jedhamu tokko qabu ayyaana cubbuu hundumaa barreessaniitu reettii tokko yookiis korbeessa hoolaa rakaa'aniitu barahaatti gatu. Cubbuun Israa'el waggaa kana hojjennu hundinuu isaanii wajjin habadodee cubbuu sana itti hidhaniitu reettii yookaan hoolaan sun zundeen bookee afaan Jarmaniitiin biyya barahaa keessa dhaqee waraabessi nyaata. Cubbuun waggaa sana hojjenne waggaa waggaatti ayyaana akkasii qabu isaan. Ayyaana qalbii diddiirrannaa jedhama. Akka sabaatti of ilaalanii ofitti deebi'anii eessatti kufne eessatti dogoggorre eessatti cubbuu walirratti hojjenne eessatti hirmiin nu keessa jira eessaa deebi'uu qabna jedhanii tokkoon godoon Israa'el 12 ofitti deebi'ee kana booddee hirmii of keessaa baasa. Hirmii wajjin waaqaa wajjin hirmiin namni qabu cubbuu namni baatu cubbuu waaqa qabatee deemuu danda'u Israa'eliif wajjin qabatee deemuu asiicha deemaa jechuudha. Lallaba koo asumatti dhaabeen attamitti asitti nutti fidde Oromootti naan jedha. Isinitti fiduuf adeemu. Dulloomeera lallabaan oolaa qeesiidha. Yoon isinitti lallabinaa obsa cubbuu keenya isinitti maka. Akka sabaatti waan cubbuu hojjennu. Achi akaanu. maa cubbuu hojjettanii miti akka seera tiyooloojiitti namni hundinuu cubbamaa cubbuu fudhatee hin kufu cubbuu kufee achi lafa cubbuu ciisa sana keessatti gangalatee an cubbuun hojjenne jechuun cubbuudha malee cubbuu hojjechuu miti cubbuu. Cubbuu hojjetee qalbii diddiirratee irraa deebi'ee gara waaqaatti deebi'uu dhiisuutu cubbuudha. Sini gara amma kanan argu cubbuu hojjenne cubbuu sana keessa ciibne abalu cubbuu hojjete malee ana miti yookii alagaan na miidhee yookii habashaan na miidhee jenne gara keenya laaluu dhiibne akkamittiin akka taane hin beeku. Maal jechuuf akka deemu hin beektu jedhee yaada. Minilik utuu goobanaan hin jirre nun miidhu walii galle nun cabsu. Goobanoota si'a meeqa qabna? Eenyutu dubbata? Cubbuu dhawooti cubbuu kana maqaa dha'ee cubbuu saba isaa galee halagaatti galuutu nu keessa jira. Iddoo tokkottoon dhaabbatu goobanummaan saba ofii gurguruun horiidhaan bitamuun obboleessa ajjeesuun Tigiree adeemanii mandara keessa adeemsisanii adda bilisummaa Oromoo waraana fichisiisaa turuun Oromoo warra afaan Oromoo haasa'edha. Yaa saba Oromoo isaaf mara Abdulzaaq jedhan dogoggorreerra. Dogoggora immoo walitti himnu Oromoo ta'e yoo obboleessi bantii ujunuu teessoodha. Cubbuu sana hojjete kan obboleessa kootiin himu tarii kan itti afaadhaan himuu naa ta'a salphaatti. Obboleessa tafaatiin gaafa sana kan akka godhe malee jira kan obboleessa koo jala dhossee jechuudha. Cubbuun garuu kan obboleessa kootis kan obboleessa tafaadhaas cubbuudhu waaqa durattis nama durattis. Saba Oromoo mandara bantiitii dhufu mandara bantiitiin dhufe kibbaa dhufu kaabaa dhufu Oromoo galeera taanaan Oromoo irratti cubbuu hojjeteera. Maqaan dhaabuu qaba deebii jedhamee itti himamuu qaba qalbii diddiirrachuu qaba. Kan jedhutti walii galan. Yoo akka ta'e wala manaa deemne gaariidha. Kanaachi walma gurguraa deemna. Wal gurgurree mootuu ittiin argamne yoo. Horiini kan ittiin hundeen hamminaa irraa burquudha. Oromoon biyya alaa jiru 2016 yeroo namni sun dhumu inni kaan immoo hamuummataa ture. Yoo mannaqee barcuma kophaa koo olitti bahee achii gadi taa'ee Oromoos miidhee sooromaa jedhee yaada. Kana miti Oromoo. Akkas waliin gooneen maqaa Oromootiin du'a Oromootiin barcuma argachuuf nabjoonneen barcuma arganne an qeesiidha haasa'een beeka dhiisaa wal jala buluu keessa wayyaa diina jalan bulinaa jennaan akka jaarsummaattuu kadhadheen na didan naa dhaggeeffatan. Kanaafi wal dhaga'uu dadhabne nutoo dabarseessa qeerroon sila dhume jette kana fuudhee itti kenne 2018 barcuma dhandhee kan miniliksan arganna jennee jarattiin culullee ofumaan urkaa butatti utuutti hin du'in urkaan afaanii nu gutte dabaa keenya qabattee nu dabsitee ittiin nu kuttee ittiin nu ajjeeftee jechuudha jarattiin hin balleessitee lafatti jennu dhabna nutu obboleessa keenyatu nu gurguree itti galee har'as nu gurguree ijoollee haadhasaa obbolaasaa fichisiisaa jira jechuudha cubbuudha kun. Kanaaf maal ta'uu qabaa jedhame miidiyaan Oromoo na dhaggeeffadha tokko cubbuun achi jalqaba. Miidiyaa kan Habashaa haasoftanis. Miidiyaan Oromoo qabsoo Oromoof du'a ijoolleedhaa ittiin sooromuudhaaf yoo godhatan ta'e cubbuudha. Biddeen nyaachuudhaaf ittiin hojii gara biraan hojjedhu ittiin horii ittiin gaafadhe jedhanii afaan qabsoo Oromoodhaa karaarraa balleessuun cubbuun tureera. Cubbuun kun itti fufee amma mootuutti baay'achaa jira. 2021 kan immoo miidiyaan balaa nurratti hojjechaa jirtu maqaa isiniin dhawanii qabsoo Oromoo laamsheessuudhaaf wal diiguudhaaf wal dorgomuudhaaf wal balleessuudhaaf hojjete cubbuudha. Miidiyaa inni kan Oromoodhaan isiniin jedha kan nama gararraa naasawu. Kanaaf deebi'a akka waaqaatti isiniin jedha warra miidiyaan aktivistiin Oromoos immoo qabsoo Oromootiif rakkina Oromoodhaa ittiin beekamuudhaaf ittiin bordhaqee barcumarra taa'uudhaaf qopheeffatte yoo ta'e cubbuudha. Achis hin geessu warra kanaan duraas hin geenye sichis hin geessu waaqes ittiin sin ga'u anillee dulloobeera silayyuu hin barbaadu aktivistiis miti aktivistoonnis hey, ofin ilaalaa saba Oromoo du'aa jiru ilaalaa walii kottaa ittiin miidiyaatti baanee guyyaa waan nu haasofnu Oromoo dhume ajjeesuurra aktivistii jechuun wal dhaggeeffatee dhaaba isaaf cimsatee jaarmiyaa isaaf cimsatee wal ijaaruudha malee jaarmiyaa isaa kuffisuu takaalu yoo ta'e jaarmiyaa gara biraan qabnu namicha tokko qabu immoo awwaaraan hin taphatu akkasitti balleessine addi bilisummaa Oromoonni hunduma keenya nama godhee jire amma laamsha'e isa kana keessatti aktivistoonni hojii taphataniiru cubbuudha deebi'uu qabna. Inni darbeera gara sichiitii jaarsaa isinitti cubbuu darbeedha aktivistoonnis iliitiin anaa jalqabee maalan godhe laataa jaarmiyaa koo diiguudhaaf diisisiisuutti kanaan dura ammas immoo maalan godhaa jira walitti deebisuuf jedhee yoon qalbii diddiirradhe gaariidhaa kan jedhuun ga'a achi yookaan walamannaa walitti deebina. Warra amantii akka kootii qeesii ofitti hin deebina. Qeesii jalqabee sheekii jalqabee mee dhaggeeffadha mee of ilaala. Gaafa 700 Hayilemaariyaam Dassaaleny Tigireen ficcisiise qeesonni keenya abbootiin gadaa keenya badaasaa hin dubbanne waa'ee Oromoodha. Gaafa Wallagga irratti gaafa Walloo irratti namni dhumu gaafa Haraaritti namni mormi citu gaafa Shishammanneetti dhumu afaan isaanii hin turre. Tigireedhaaf dhandhee jedhanii si'a lama haadha siiqqee abbaa gadaa sheekii qeesii wal ga'anii dheengadda kanaan duras achi dhaqanii dheengadda immoo xaafii geessanii Maqalee dhaqan maa dhaqanii jechuudha. Sinii galaa lafatti kufne wangeela lallabaadhatu mana isaatii diigamu Wallaggaa nama badu walitti dhumu Hararii badu hundumaa ganeetu warra kaan ijaaruudhaaf warra kaaniin kadhata gochuuf dhaqa. Maallu haa godharree warra amantii kan isaanii hoonuu irratti duulan. Qeesiin keenya hoonuu ganee, sheekiin keenya hoonuu ganee, abbaan gadaa hoonuu ganee, haadhi siiqqee hoonuu gantee maqaa gadaatiif maqaa aadaatiin. Cubbuudha. Deebi'uu qabu. Dhaggeeffadhaa warra biyya keessaa maal wanta hin ta'us hin jiru kana booddee dulloomeera. Kanaaf warri dheengadda xaafii geessitanii Maqalee dhaqxanii maaloo xaafii sana fudhadhaatii gara Bigiittis gara Hararittis gara Shishammanneetti gadi ka'a yoo dhuguma waaqaaf hojjettu ta'e. Yoomma barcuma keessaniif hojjette waaqayyo barcuma keessan isin jalaa kaasa meenee teeqeen uuma fariisaanii jedha raajii Daani'el keessaa salphattee argamtee mijanamtee mootummaan keessa bakka lamatti gargar tamsa'ee jedha macaafa keessa. Yoo akka gootan akkuma jara saba tuulamaa ari'anii lafa isaanii irraa fudhatanii in sooroma jedhanii fooqii ijaaranii itti galuu dhabdanii isinis ittiin galtan sagalee waaqaa jedha. Yaa qeesi yaa sheeki Oromoo afaan Oromoo haasa'u Oromoon diigin qabsoo Oromoon laafsheessin warra Oromoo biran dhaabbatin saba Oromoon joonjessin cubbuudha waaqa si gaafata seenaanis si gaafata kana cubbuun lafti nu achii kaa'uu qabnaa nan jedhu. Kanaaf egaa horii dhumtuuf aangoo nama gantu jennee Oromoo gatuun cubbuudha. Waaqayyo kana nu haa oolchu. Barri 21ffaa bara nuyi ofittummaa keessaa baanee Oromummaan adeemna ta'u. Bara nuyi jal'ina dhiibnee gara waaqaatti deebinee Oromoof dhaabbannu nuuf ta'u. Kana irratti hojjennu warri Habashaa rakkoo keenya walitti himneerra amma rakkoo keenya ivaaluweet of xiinxallee akkuma isin jettan kana gara fuulduraatti isin nu dhiyeessaa yoo jaarsoliin balleessine jaarsoliin taa'aa nu dhaggeeffadhaa jedha. Teenyee isin dhaggeeffannee isin nurkaa fudhadhaa. Nus sirrachuu qabna. Jaarsa ta'eef harrii baatee fi beekaa ta'e jechuu miti. Kanaaf jaarsummaa salphisaa moo jechuu koo miti. Kanaaf asirratti yoo kaane gara fuulduraatti yoo deemne tarii waaqayyo nu gargaaraa fayyaa ta'a. Waaqa isin haa eebbisu itti fufna walitti hinna tarii waan nama haasa'e kun nama gaddisiisuu hin danda'a. Yaada kooti malee immoo kan giruuppii kanaa miti kan qeesii kan mataa koo kan bantii jedhaa fudhadha. Ittiin gaafatama. Bartokko. Waaqayyo nu agarsiise kanaaf malee kanaafin waan natti dhaga'ame haasa'e cubbuu hojjenne hirmiin nu keessa jira. Hirmii sana maqaasaa dhoofnee hirmii isa deebii dennee isa deebi'uu didennee of keessaa baafnee wal qabannee waaqa qabannee laga haceemuu bilisummaan argannaas namni miliyoonii 50 kan inni kufee fi nuti wal gurguree waaqayyo kana nu haa oolchu salphina kana keessaa nu haa baasu hunduma keessaa eebbisu fayyaa ta'a. Obbo Jamaalitti dabarsa.
Haasaa keessan hundaa dhaggeeffadheeti himimmaan bu'aan ture dhugaan isiniin jedha. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. It's so powerful. Baay'ee galatooma. I just want to start by thanking the committee which has prepared this, and also the organizing member organizations of the OGF, or Oromo Human Rights Group, a coalition of Oromo human rights advocacy organizations, advocacy for Oromia Support Group, the OSG, Mention Rights Organization, Mention Rights and Health Organization of the Oromo from Germany, and Human Rights League for the Horn of Africa. And I would like to thank also the younger generation, very intelligent, enlightened, articulate, self-respecting and self-confident generation. I would like to, by name, Dihangatu, Adimaratu, Obabdi, and also those of you who are in this room and outside of this room, we are very much proud of you. And your nation is looking up to you. I would like to thank the panelists, Professor Trumwell, Mr. Dejanet Sama, Mr. Abdurazak Nabo, and Obotafa Boka for bringing us, enlightening us hugely in this session of today. I would like also to thank the participants, those who have been asking very invaluable questions and also forwarding your comments. I'm very much delighted to see Oromo, very powerful Oromos, with a huge amount of energy and quality of their presentations in this room today. Last year, we have been trying to work hard to bring Oromo organizations together as much as possible under an umbrella called Oromia Global Forum. Our purpose is just nothing other than bringing Oromo resources together so that we resolve the problem we are in, the weaknesses you guys have mentioned before. No Oromo should sit idle when another Oromo is being killed. No Oromo should sit idle and look around when an Oromo person is being imprisoned, when Oromo homes are burned down, when Oromo girls are raped, when mothers and fathers are being killed just because either their daughter or son supports an organization or is a member of an organization. These lives which we are losing are all Oromos, are all human beings. And no Oromo, whatever religion or region he is from, whatever age group he belongs to, or gender, should sit around and look simply, oh, it is not at my home. Oh, he is not a Christian like me, or he is not a Muslim like me, or she is not a girl like me. We have to end that cycle. That is why we have been trying for the last 3-4 years, coming together behind the scene, people who you have never seen, never mentioned their names, who contribute to the formation of Oromia Global Forum. We have discussed for a very long time, strategized as much as possible to resolve this problem of diversion from the enemy, and also the problem of collaborators within our society. So our values are very simple. We want freedom, we want to be independent, and we stand for the Oromo people to decide whatever they want. Nobody else should decide for the Oromo people, not even Oromo intellectuals and elites. Like my brother Itafa said before, Oromo politicians or elites have tried to decide for the Oromo people, and maybe in the last 150 years, whether it is on individual basis or an organized group. This time, we have to organize our people so that our people decide whatever they want. We don't want anybody to prescribe to our Oromo people what they want to be. The people have to have the say. And for that, we are responsible, all of us, individuals. If I decide for myself, if you decide for yourself, then we all decide together for ourselves. That is the idea we are promoting. Oromos have to be able to decide for themselves. Ethiopia cannot decide for Oromos. The only decision Ethiopia have been making for Oromo so far for the last 150 years is subjugation, dehumanization, destruction of human resources and material possessions, killings, torture, eviction from their own homeland. In millions, it's not only in hundreds, it is not in thousands, it is in millions. Oromos have been evicted from their land. And nobody talks about that. Every day, 3, 4, 5, 6 members of a family are being killed. In Matakal, you have heard recently, 9 members from one family were killed. The only person who survived was the person who was not at home, just by chance. So Oromos are being killed everywhere. Oromo students have been killed in the Amhara region last year in huge number. They were identified by their names, by their identity cards. Nothing was said about that. No media spoke about it, even including ours. So we have to stop this. The killing must stop. We can stop that only if we do our part. Like Sophia and my brother said, we can't get anything from the colonizer. It is not their purpose. In fact, the purpose of the colonizer is, if it is possible, to eradicate, to eliminate the whole population and own the land. I think many of you have heard, many of the proponents, supporters of Menelik are saying today, Menelik did a mistake. His mistake was that he didn't commit the worst kind of genocide on the Oromo and eradicate them like the Red Indians. So what they are saying today is, it is our purpose. It is the purpose of this generation, the survival of the Menelik ideology, to eradicate, eliminate Oromos once and for all, so that they don't uprise, so that they don't question our dominance, our control over Oromia. Are we ready to be like that? I'm sure not. Oromia Global Forum is trying hard to bring all Oromos across the board. Recently, we have about 46 member organizations from all denomination sectors of the society. We are trying to bring together Oromo civic, professional, and faith-based organizations, and individual Oromos, prominent, who would like to sacrifice whatever they can for this society. So we invite all of you, probably who have not heard so far about Oromia Global Forum, to be its member. All Oromo churches, partly some of them are in coalition. There is, for example, one Oromo church, Oromo Evangelical Union of Oromo Evangelical Church, under which about 58 Oromo churches are a member. So all Oromo mosques in Minneapolis, all Oromo churches in Washington and other areas are already its member. Please join us. To stop what is going on us, we have to really stop scapegoating on the enemy, because the enemy's purpose is just that. We have to look into ourselves and join our hands. I would like to thank all the panelists and the participants. It was so an eye-opening for all of us, especially the question that Sophia has raised at the end. What do you even expect from the colonizer? Why are you talking about they didn't do this for us, they didn't do this for us? I don't think we should expect anything to be done for us from the colonizer. It is we who has to do something for our people, for ourselves. Let us get united and do the work. Nobody else will be responsible for anything, whether we do mistake or do the right thing for us. The Western governments, they have got their own interests. Professor Tronvel already said. The UN doesn't say anything because it has got some offices in Finland, in Addis. If it says something, Abiy will close their offices. So they don't want their offices to be closed, but they rather opt for almost to be killed and die. So there is a different interest. They have got different interests than the interest we have. Our interest is about survival. The interest of others is to secure their offices. That cannot go together. The EU has also similar interests. We can tell them our stories day and night. As long as it is not in the interest of theirs, they may do nothing. We can go to their offices day and night for diplomacy and advocacy issue. They may do nothing for us. It is us who have to do something. And on this world, as far as I know, it's only a politically organized people who can determine its fate. Civic institutions can contribute a lot, I understand, but in no world as a civic institution, a political solution in its hand. We will organize our people in civic organizations, but we still demand from Oromo political leaders to listen to our people and lead correctly. And the civic society has to take also its part, its role, organize our people so that they raise up their rights. And young girls, young boys, those of you who are raising up the problems that are going on in Africa, in Oromia, I'm sure they overwhelm you all the time. We want you to take the leadership, coming forward like you did today. Oromo girls, Oromo boys, take leadership. Everybody is behind you. Everybody is willing to support you. Don't be scared. Don't be scared that maybe the older generation will hinder your leadership. No, nobody is willing to do that. You have seen that what the Keros have done, even though the older generation have did the mistake. And I don't know. I don't know whether I have to blame the older generation for 2018. But the younger generation have to demand its rightful place in the world. Oromos are the largest nation in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, second to the Hausa in Nigeria. We have to really claim our rightful place. We should not beg anything. We're not asking anybody to give anything of others to us, but we have to claim what is ours. We have to stand in unity. We should not fear for what is right. So, akkanatti fakkaatutti obboleeyyan kiyya rakkoon manuma keenyatti as deebiti. Afaan Oromootiin xiqqoo hojiidha. Manuma keenyatti as deebiti yoo nuti gandaan, yoo nuti amantiin, yoo nuti gosaan, yoo nuti umriin, yoo nuti beekumsaan, yoo nuti qabeennaan, ani sooressaa inni kun hiyyeessa, ani beekaadha inni kun wallaalaadha, ani dhiira isin tun dubartiidha jennee wal qoqqoonna ta'e diinaaf meeshaa nutu ta'aa jira. Kana keessaa yoo baane garuu namni akka Oromoo addunyaa kanarratti keessattuu Afrikaa keessatti carraa qabu hin jiru. Uummata waa inni eebbisee lakkoofsaan guddisee lafa bal'aa kenneefi irra jiraatu akka itti fayyadamu akka itti ofii wal fayyadu wal wallaalee sirna dhamaasaa sirna Itoophiyaa jedhu kana keessa nu gaadi'anii isa keessa dhamaarra. Sirna dhamaasaa kana keessaa baanee yoo of taane akka abbootii keenya akka hawwata keenya bakka barbaannu hin rakkoon takka hin jirtu. Sirna dhamaasaa kana keessaa bahuuf nu martuu mata mataan murteeffanna. Ani hin fudhadhu waan ati waggaa 150 irratti dalayde. Waan ati maqaa nama moggaafte, caasaa ati irratti ijaarte, waan ati natti dhaadheessitu sirna Habashaa ani hin fudhadhu jedhee Oromoon bartee murteeffate dubbiin tenne hiikkatteerti. Karakkoo ta'e ololli jara ganda keenya dhufeeti. Innis walitti makamneerraa jaarsaaf jaartii taaneerraa dhiigni tokko taheeraa jedhee nutti olola oofaa. Oromtichi as jirus eeyyee dhugaadhaa jedhee jala dhawwaaqa jechuudha. Waan inni ofiisaatiif hojjetate, waan inni sitti dhaadessu, kan inni afaan Amaaraatiin dubbate afaan Oromootti hiiktee yoo natti as dhawwaaqxe atii fi inni garaagarummaan qabdu the content of the message is the same. Afaanuma hiikne malee. Kana keessaa bahuu qabna. Yoo kana keessaa baanee waan diinni keenya nuun jedhu ofiin jechuu dhiifnee waan nuti taane ofii keenyaa walitti himne in injifanna bakka barbaanne gahuu dandeenya. Saba akka Oromoo carraa qabu nagarre biyya sanitti. An dhugaan isiniin jedha. Sabaaf Solomoonni biroo akkuma keenya cunqurfamaadha. hiddaan dhiigaan seenaa wal fakkaanna sirna cunqursaa jalatti wal fakkaanna aadaaf afaan isaanii nu fakkaata nutu hojii keenya dalaguu dhabee uummata fira nuu ta'ullee diina nutti godhanii nutti diinomsanii nutis walitti nu diinomsanii diinni nurra taa'aa jechuudha. Kana keessa bu'uu hin dandeenya. Sammuu qabna yaaduu dandeenya ilmaan Oromoo sammuu nama biraatii gadi miti. Wanni hojjechuun nun malee maalin yaadaa fi sammuu qabna kana walitti fiduun irra jira. Dhaaba Oromoonni sirna nafxanyaa jala deemtan. Dhaaba Oromoonni TPLF fi wayyaanee jala deemnee Oromoo bu'aa finna jettan. Dura Oromoo tokkoomsaa. Akkuma isiniin jedhaan namni dhugaadhaan furmaata biyya saniif naannoo sanitti barbaadu ka Oromoo irraa baqatee Tigiratti fiigu ka Oromoo irraa baqatee Amaaratti fiigu Oromoo furmaatan fiduu naannoo saniifis furmaatan fidu maaliif otoo mana kan kee humna kan kee hin jabeessin bakka biraatti humna argadha jettee gaafa obboleessa keetti bololaa jirta humna kan kee laaffisaa jirta. Jara keenya yeroo mara kan mara walitti munnu irra hin jiru wanni martuu harka keenya jira. Hireen biyyattii sanii, hireen naannoo sanii, hireen keenya illee nu harka jira. We have to just claim our rightful place. Ofitti haa himnu, walitti haa himnu. Dhiisaa warri gariin waan amma dhiyeenya kana isin qunname isinitti hima. Akkuma amma haasaa jiru kana sabaaf sablammoota Itoophiyaa keessa jiran kana wajjin walitti yoo hiikne qabsoo Oromoo illee qabsoo isaanii illee gargaara jennee mari'ataa turre. Konferansii yeroo tokko goonee konferansii gaafa lammataa gaafa deebinu Oromoo keessa warri OGF jedhamu kun Itoophiyaan jaalatanii maaliif bira dhayxu? Warri sunni warra hamaadha. Yaadni isaanii yaada walleef jedhanii sabaaf sablammoota irratti nu kasasan nu yakkan Oromoonni. Amma namni Oromoo gargar baasu kun akkamitti Itoophiyaa tokkoomsuu akka danda'us naan galu jechuudha. Kanaafuu Oromoo waan goonu dubbiin nu bira jirti ofii keenya ofaa sirreessinu. Gaafa nuti sirreessinu bakka maraa geenna. And I would like to conclude by thanking again and again all the committee members who have organized a wonderful. Yeah.
Can you give me a minute, please?
Yes, I will. Jerry close got in Anjada. You was in the kidney motor and the Veras Nakin in Anjada. Because you can get out in Jenna. Probably the Kavalo is in Hena. I don't know whether I'm allowed to do that. Also, I have to ask because I'm not one of the organizers. And any facility very well. So the being good Donny, just to conclude now, I would like to thank again and again the organizers of this conference. We will have multiples of conferences like this. Last year, 2020, was the year of formation of the OGF, the coalition of Oromo organization. This year, we want to produce results. Therefore, we ask all of you, please, as much as possible, to cooperate, to collaborate, to work together. With that, I would like to thank again the young girls and young boys and all the presenters and the people who were present on the conference of today and who have been also listening maybe on other media outlets like on Kelo, people who have also helped us, the Oromo medias. Thank you so much. And when we are holding another conference similar to this one, we ask the cooperation of our media outlets too. We want this message to get to the wider public. We thank Kelo and Gadaa Media Network for today's presentation. I think maybe others may be present as well. But those of you who may not have been part of this endeavors today, please cooperate. Please help us. Let us reach to our people together. With this, I would like to give Ade Safia because she asked me 1 or 2 minutes. I apologize. I ask for forgiveness from the coordinators. I give her just 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll conclude. Ade Safia.
Well, thank you for giving me this chance. First of all, I am so happy to see younger generation here today, and I can't even explain how happy I am. And I hope you guys massively will get involved with this organization and learn about it. And we teach each other our history. Most importantly, knowing our history give us energy. It gives us a chance to go forward. So like my brothers say, you are the next generation. You have to take over. You have to lead us. You are the future hope of Oromo and Oromia. That being said, want to ko wanan jechu barbadu namni keenya kutaa qofaanii miti gargar diddiigame. We're not just divided by states or boundary. We were divided into small groups. Ganda keessatti means the cities, the towns. If you look at Oromia, think about, we're not saying we're going to do something or say something, but think about it, how they divide us mentally, they colonize us. The reason that we don't listen to each other, we don't come together, because mentally we is still living into that what colony did to us. In the little town, there always someone else is in there to make sure that we don't listen to each other, to make sure that we don't come together, to make sure that they take away what belongs to us. When we go to their court, who the judge is there? The judgment for who? For them. Our people lose their land, they end up working for them. The mother, the father, the children work for them. So they did whatever it took to divide us. It's going to take us a long time to realize that what colony did to us, it destroyed us mentally. It destroyed us mentally for generations. When I left back home, Oromo population was 70 million. Where did the rest go? Today's only we claiming 50, sometimes 60, sometimes we don't even know. Every war that happened to that land, the gate is who? Oromo people, Oromo youngster. Who's been, even Haile Selassie, there's a say, you know, Galang Kombion, Galang Kombion, Lich Wuladu Bachono, something like that is there. Why? It's not because they want us to have children from us, because it's the way for them to say, hey, you're my mother. Oh, my father is Amhara. How are we going to divide us? How are you going to separate us? It's a way to colonize us. It's a way to destroy our roots, our history. It's a way to dismantle us. We need to understand that. We need to learn that. Why Oromo's not doing what we do? We always complain we don't come together, because the colony made sure in every little town put in a laga between us. So we can never listen or come together or want things for one another. Alaganto ko ufe, want to konokodate, we are quick to do it. Now, if you want to go, will you go to no. If 5 of us agree, one person get up, and the whole thing is right there, it's done. So we need to learn how we're gonna clear our mind and realize what colonizers did to us, so we can come together as the unity. Because it's still, if you look at it, in so many ways, we are divided. In so many ways, when one start doing the right thing, the other one get up to dismantle this one. So that's still going on, even in abroad. So we got to figure a way out to do something to realize why we are the way we are, why we're doing the thing we do to each other. But the younger generation, you guys have so much opportunity, because you didn't go through what I went through. You didn't grow up the way I grew up. So you got so much chance. You got chance for education. You got chance for your brain to be free. To your brain to be free. Develop in the way you want to. You choose your life. You choose your future. I never had that. I never even heard of it until I came to the United States. You understand? So you got taken these opportunities, organize yourself, because you have the most beautiful country that who have not the snow, not the freezing weather. You have all the way around sun and the mountain, fertile land. Why you think that Everybody want our land. Because of it, we get the best of everything that God gave us. But most of it, we colonize mentally. That is why everything is so hard for us. So you need to learn from us so you can be stronger. Unity, more than ever. Find your kind, find Oromo children who born here, get in touch with each other, pull each other, make a chain, a strong chain. You can be Congress here speaking for Oromia. You can be leader here voting for Oromia. Barack Obama, his father is what? Kenyan. His mother is here. I tell you one thing, me and my son argue. They say, oh, he's an American. I say, nope, he's African first and then American second. Why? His father is from Africa. So I kind of like tell my son, you know, you can be somebody, you can do something for your people, for your country. Now he can't wait to go back home and see everything for himself. So you guys who raised here and born here, you got so much chance. Please chain up to each other, learn from us, take it, and you can hit the goal with help of God. And I'm sorry I talked too much. So
It is fine, it's fine.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I think with this we conclude. So chain up, get stronger, work together, and we will resolve our problem. No problem. Unity hojjenne wanni nuti dandeenye hin jiru. Amana ofitti waan ilmi namaa danda'u hunda Oromoon hin danda'a. Waan ilmi namaa danda'e. Nama jala fiiguun nurra hin jiru. Mana keenyatti hojii keenya hojjennu waan illee nu milkeessa, waan illee nu gargaara. Baay'ee galatooma ulfaadha. I think we will close with this. Dr. Galato, if you want to say something, and then we will finish.
Professor Asfaw, jechuu barbaadu? Harka isaanii darga'u.
Okay. In vain, yoo jechuun namni agachuu barbaaddan yoo jiraattan ta'e deeqaa soddomman takka fudhachuu nu dandeenyaan fakkaata.
I just want to say thank you very much, and I want to stop now. And I'm hungry and tired.
Okay, so it is your time to get food and drink now.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Professor Aspa, you want to say something?
Yes, I saw Trev eating. How come there? He did see.
I think we can stop.
That's true.
I think an inch of Namo come going on.
My wife said this next time, please make it at least an hour too early. I mean later, because this forces me to get up at 6 a.m. And some of you, at least one of you, my email at 1 a.m. So it's very, very difficult during these COVID years. We sit very late, 1, 2 a.m. and then get up at 6 is difficult. But if this has to be this way, no problem. We can get up once every, in a blue moon. But to do this regularly, it's very, very difficult. Am I up to the organizing committee?
I'm sorry to interfere. We are on live, so I think this has to be a discussion behind the door.
Yeah, very true. Thank you so much. I think we can stop live streaming now. People who are streaming live now, please.
Yeah.
The live streaming can be stopped.